Recording in progress. We are live. Hello. Hello, Alessandro. Gagliardi.
Hello.
Is that the
Gagliardi.
Gagliardi?
The second G is silent.
We have a Gagliardi exit off the freeway that I used to have to take an hour out of town to go to a ninjutsu friend's place to play D&D, and I think everyone pronounced it Gilardi. Maybe that's just because the
I got that. I've gotten that too. Yeah.
I think that's because maybe the SkyTrain voice, the automated voice, would be like, the next stop is, you know, I don't know. Maybe it's, I can't remember what we pronounce it. Some listener in Vancouver is like, it's Gaglardi, dude. And I'm like, okay.
My favorite was Galariety. That was how my name was spelled once.
Oh, nice.
That was not right at all, but anyway, it worked. So.
Yeah. So hey, let's kick it off right away so people know why the hell we're talking to each other. You are up to something, and I want to know more about what you're up to. I checked out a page that's a questionnaire, and you have questions on the questionnaire, which was shocking. Do you want to? Are you interested in learning this? Are you interested in learning that? Are you interested in this? What the hell are you up to, brother?
Yeah. So for a long time, I mean, for a long time I wanted to teach. I've taught data science and neuroscience and psychology. But what I really want to teach is the stuff you're into, right?
Okay.
is magic, is stuff like that. And of course, there's a million people out there teaching magic. But what I'm trying to do is basically bring together what I learned in grad school with regard to like neuroscience and psychology and how the brain works, with what I've learned in the mystery schools of magic and invocation, evocation, and working with spirits, and bringing those together in a way that is, I refer to it as a neurophenomenological approach to magic. Of course, I realize that most people won't have any idea what any of those words mean. So the name of my course is Unlocking the Unconscious with Ritual and Symbol. But that's it's basically like an intro course for people who have actually never heard of magic or wouldn't even think to look for it, but who are interested in like, there's something more going on into my mind than, is my consciousness, is my ego, and how do I access that? And of course, one way is psychedelics, which I'm not covering, but is an effective tool. But the tools of magic and ritual and symbol, I think, are very effective ways of unlocking that. So that's what that's about.
And it's called Unlocking.
My current working title is Unlocking the Unconscious Through Symbol and Ritual.
Beautiful. It's of course reminiscent of that wonderful line, by names and images are all powers awakened and reawakened in the neophyte initiation of the Golden Dawn.
Absolutely, yes.
Definitely. So you have a psychological background, right? What's your education, and tell us about
that. In the mid 2000s or early 2000s, I wanted to so I quit my first job out of college to try to follow my will, as I understood it. And I was getting into Curly at the time, and I all about following your will. And I decided my will was not to make somebody else into a millionaire, but to understand the mysteries of consciousness and the mind. So I tried getting into psychology programs. I finally got into a neuroscience program. And pursued a PhD in integrative neuroscience at Rutgers for about 6 years.
That's a good school.
Yeah. And advanced to candidacy and went through 3 dissertation proposals, but couldn't quite make any of them work. But learned a lot along the way. And then finally funding ran out, and trying to make a living as a teacher didn't work, is impossible, as I'm sure many of your listeners know. So ended up going into the tech industry, but always, never like stopped being interested in neuroscience and psychology and consciousness and that sort of thing. And all the while doing the magic thing.
Yeah. So how are you doing this course in a way that brings those things together?
So the way that I'm kind of starting out is basically establishing what I'm produce a neurophenomenological approach, which I'll break that down, of course. But that term, I didn't come up with that. That's Francisco Varela, who's big into, well, he's dead now, but he was big into Buddhism and neuroscience. He kind of he brought that together. And basically, it's kind of funny. Basically, what I'm doing is I'm using what we know about neuroscience to basically say that the science doesn't matter.
Oh, lost your audio there for a second. Uh-oh, where's your audio
Test.
gone? Sorry, you're dropped out for a minute.
Okay.
I lost you at that the science doesn't matter.
Yeah. So basically, once you understand how the brain constructs our experience, and that you don't experience anything directly, and that everything is essentially an illusion that's constructed by your brain, then I think that kind of makes it so you don't have questions about what's literally happening, or what the objective, whether or not spirits are objectively real or things like that, just becomes irrelevant. And that opens the door to kind of getting into the fun stuff, which is like, okay, actually working with this stuff and working with these entities and with these sort of aspects of whatever is out there.
Yeah, what do you think about the idea? I think that scientists are some are talking about consciousness, us needing to realize that there's less of a distinct separation between what we consider to be our consciousness and reality itself. And I assume when they say that, they are talking on a physical level, as much as the word physical can be used.
Yeah. So, I mean, I could interpret that a couple ways, but one thing that's been coming up a lot again is this idea of panpsychism, or panprotopsychism. The idea that the universe itself is conscious in a way, that consciousness is sort of baked into matter. It's not a separate thing. Like you have this sort of Cartesian dualism that we have from, thanks to Descartes, going back to where there's like the mind and the body, and they're two separate things. And I think that's kind of how most of us think about it most of the time, is that there's the world of the mind and the world of the body.
Not only
And
that, if I can just say,
yeah,
but Descartes believed that you could understand the physical world through the mental, exclusively, almost like that.
well, right.
That you can just sit there and through your mind understand the things around you, which is of the Platonic approach rather than the Aristotelian that says actually the devil's in the details, and if you don't look at
Right.
data, you're going to come up with some wonky conclusions, ignoring the
Right.
data. Is that, do you think
Yeah,
that
yeah,
helps
absolutely.
clarify? Okay, I'm just trying to, some people might not
Yeah,
have
yeah.
read Descartes.
No, sorry, you're right. I have to, I have to remember that uh, the audience, a
So
very diverse audience.
yeah, not to throw you off, but yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah. So right. So the kind of common understanding is that there's the world of the mind and the world of the body. And the problem with that is that there's no coherent way to bring those two together. Descartes thought it was in the pineal gland, would this be like this magical little thing that kind of was like the control center where the mind could kind of control the body. Doesn't really actually make sense.
was
Uh,
was he wrong? You think he was
yeah,
wrong?
he was wrong. He was wrong about that.
Well, I think the pineal gland's still sort of important, but anyway.
Oh, well, it's definitely important, but it's not. There's no little person in there pulling the levers and making your body go around.
It's not your
Um,
HGA, which is sitting in the pineal gland as like a thetan spirit.
Pop it out anyway.
I am the last thetan.
Right. And so, and other people have come up with ideas like the brain is like a radio receiver, but that doesn't actually work out either. And so then there's mental monism and physicalism, and so physicalism is the idea that there is no mind. It's all just It's all just matter. But the problem is that with that is like, well, I don't know about you, but I have a subjective experience, and physicalism doesn't really explain that. And then there's mental monism, which is the idea that the physical reality is just a hallucination and it's all mind. And that's actually a fairly reasonable, I mean, it's just kind of a strange view, but it's actually like, it is coherent, unlike the other two. You can, this all could just be a virtual reality. This all could just be a giant hallucination. The big reason why I don't buy that is that the physical world is too surprising. That if it was all just made up, I don't think we would have things like quantum physics, because nobody could come up with that. Literally nobody could come up with that. So the physical world is too strange to be a construction of the mind, in my opinion. So that leads to the third option, which is neutral monism or property dualism, which is that it's all one stuff, but it has a mental aspect and a physical aspect. It has a subjective aspect and an objective aspect. And this, in all of reality, has this. And so everything has the elements of consciousness in it, including inanimate objects. But the thing about inanimate objects is that their consciousness is so simple that it's not that interesting. But when you get something together like a brain, then you have kind of a, that's where things get interesting.
And yeah, I've always quoted, I like the Roger Penrose thing where he doesn't like being called a materialist because he says we don't yet know what the matter is. So why are you calling me a materialist? Yeah, it's interesting stuff. So how do you have some so how do you approach that how are you going to approach that in the course?
Well, so when it comes to my particular approach of panpsychism, it actually doesn't come up directly that much. It is kind of my underlying, that's my background, that's what I believe is how reality works. But when it comes to working with, when it comes to where the rubber hits the road, where you actually are doing stuff, it kind of doesn't necessarily matter. And in fact, the idealist or mental monist point of view, even though I don't think that's correct from a physical point of view, it's a very good way to approach it as an experience. So, because all that we experience is mind. All that we experience, even though I think that there actually is a world out there, we don't actually experience it directly. We only experience what our brain constructs for us. So from a subjective point of view, it is all mind. And approaching it that way, I think, is practical, even if it's not literally true.
We have to use the best map that we have for the terrain.
Exactly.
Otherwise,
right.
We're truly lost. And we can change that map based on what we find.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, because like when you go into, if you look at a map, like a city is not actually a perfect square, right? But also, it's much more convenient.
and America's not as big as it looks on maps. Europe is practically invisible if you saw a true topographical representation. It'd be like, that speck? That's Europe?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Damn. But yeah, that was a great episode, I remember, of The West Wing, where they taught Martin Sheen all about like how they've been expanding the size of America so it looks like as big as Canada, which it's not at all. Go Canada. Well, sort of. Not oh my God, let's not talk about that. Whew. Yeah, we have to meet. Churches have to meet in secret now, or you'll get arrested and put in a jail cell in maximum security, where the violent offenders have been released due to the danger of them getting COVID, but they'll put him in, and the trial he's awaiting to be heard for is for a crime that under no circumstances will result in him going to jail, but he's in max security up until a trial for a crime that in no will not send him to jail under any circumstances. just give them some sort of probation. That's where I live. Anyway, I had to say one thing because it's especially as a spiritual and clergy person. That's anyway. So and they would make Russia look bigger and stretch it so that it looked more threatening. Like that they would do that to the maps. They our standard maps are still like this as far as I know. So yes.
Well, I think at the end of that episode, if I remember correctly, they say it's like, do you have any other suggestions? And they're like, yeah, actually flip it upside down.
Yeah, yeah, and then they were just like, okay, we're
mind
done.
blown.
We're
Yeah.
done. We're done. We can't do that. I mean, you could view it on its side even, right?
Yeah.
Like that, like the idea, the perspective we have is so. This is actually we're back on topic now, right? This is this anthropocentric perspective we have of the universe is intrinsically related to the variance of inner and outer, subjective and objective. And why not put the planet on its side? And that way, none of us are on the top or the bottom. We're all just sideways. You know, that I actually think, I don't know why we haven't done that. That makes more sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, it just means that when you go, you kind of go around the world going up instead of to the side. But
just even us thinking about this right here demonstrates really the problem that you're approaching in your work, right? And so yeah, tell me more.
Yeah.
Within panpsychism, is anything really objective, or is the objective the unknown?
The objective is the unknown and unknowable. Because you can't, if it's knowable, it is inherently subjective, right? Because if you have to have a point of view in order to know anything.
Yeah.
Although that point of view can be expanded, and that's where you have like these oceanic experiences and things like that.
Yeah, I think this is what Jacques Lacan, the psychoanalyst, would call the big other, right? And what Henri Bergson said could only ever be connected with in even the slightest way, potentially through human intuition and nothing else. Nothing else. If we have a faculty that lets us know the other, or the other of the other, the true objective reality, the ontos, it's through our intuition. And if that can't do it, nothing can. Which brings up very interesting things when it comes to magic.
Yes. Yeah. Although I actually might say the best way to understand the other is it maybe through math.
Okay.
Because math is able to reveal things that you could never have thought of otherwise. And that's how we have the ability to actually do things with quantum mechanics that nobody can understand, but actually work.
Yeah, you can test them and they work. Right.
But anyway, that's beside the point.
Well, we're definitely at the limits of my knowledge on this stuff, so you're the expert here. Well, if as you develop and present this course, and people can go and do the questionnaire, we'll provide links. What will be sort of the first steps in what people will be studying and learning in this course?
Yeah, so this course is this particular one that we're focusing on is very, as I said, it's very beginner friendly. The first part of it is really just sort of setting the stage for how we can talk about things like, unconscious intelligence is kind of what I really kind of started getting into. Is once you understand most of what's happening in our brain, we're not conscious of, and there's all this stuff that's happening that is really interesting. That opens the question of, okay, how do we get access to that? How do we talk to or interact with that unconscious intelligence? And one way is through dreams, and that's can be very effective. But another way is through symbol and ritual. And then we get into things like visualization. A lot of people, they're not very good at visualization. They haven't done it since they were a kid. So kind of basic exercises to build up your ability to visualize a flaming pentagram in front of you, and and then maybe some guided visualizations to go to your place of power, and then kind of building up to being able to actually ideally have a conversation with someone on in the inner world. And basically it's a way to kind of introduce the concept of magic without actually introducing magic. And then at the end, once you kind of got all that, then you can go off and read, modern magic, or take the Queria course, or any number of other things, and have a context for interacting with it, for learning from it, without, I think a lot of people are kind of, pushed away, or at least I am, honestly, by claims that are made by the authors that I'm like, I can't buy that. I don't think that doesn't make sense. Why should I just take your word for it that that's how the world works? But if you understand it phenomenologically, then it's like, okay, well, that's your experience, and maybe I can have that experience too, and that's really cool.
Yeah. What do you think the difference is then between, for example, if you've done like a lesser invoking ritual, a pentagram, and you're visualizing the angels facing inward, and you commune with one of those angels, versus calling one of those angels in a greater ritual of evocation into a triangle or a crystal outside the circle or on the table of practice? What do you think? Because that is the classic, that invokes the classic duality of this micro macrocosm relationship. We see those two kinds of operations as different. They're definitely different. And I would expect different kinds of knowledge from them. I would expect on the one, knowledge more about myself, since I would see that as working within my microcosm and the reflection of the being, whereas in the other operation, I would be seeking to bridge that gap through that veil with something that could give me on the level of intuition knowledge that I might learn because it's reflected in me, but that I don't consciously have. So I don't know. And am I bringing that reality within myself, outside of myself, so I can see what I can't see within myself? Or what do you see is going on there, because you have experience in these things, which we'll get to later?
Yes. No, I love the way that you put that. That's really good, because that gets to the idea of what is active imagination, which I think is a really confusing term for a lot of people, because if you think of active imagination, it means people would think, or one might think that means that you are actively imagining, and that's not what that means. What it means is that your imagination is active.
It should be called passive imagination.
Kind of, although you're not entirely passive either, right? Like when you're evoking an angel, you're not entirely passive.
No,
but
you're receptive.
But you're receptive, exactly.
Or the scryer is. Someone should be receptive somewhere.
Somebody is receptive, either a part of yourself or another person, right?
Hopefully the person you're doing the magic for is receptive.
Right.
You want that curse to be effective.
Right. And yes.
I've been reading too much John King.
I don't know John King, but
Imperial Arts. Now here's a Goetic Solomonic magician who absolutely believes that any form of visualization is the height of stupidity and an utter waste of your time and complete phoniness. Yeah, he also considers the Golden Dawn to be completely New Age, which makes me think he doesn't have a strong command of logic, because that's they came into existence 100 years apart from each other. So sure, maybe he's just not very critical and terminologically weak, but I find it, when people are really convinced that what they believe is right and everything else is wrong, they tend to make offhand comments. It came across more that way, not as in he's not a smart guy. I think he's a very smart guy, but I don't necessarily agree with him.
Right. Yeah, no, and it is really interesting to read, because I would be interested in reading that, because
it's like $10
even if I don't agree with him.
It's a delightful read to hear 24 accounts of 24 Goetic evocations, and he claims to have, in the process of working with those demons, killed 3 people, 2 through an earthquake and the third being his mother. So He's
Oh, that's great.
honest. He's honest. Well, like, you know, we do want more honest accounts of magical practitioners.
That's true.
You know, whether we agree with them or
I just
not,
don't.
the
I just don't
honesty is
trust
good.
them. Well, I don't trust that they're dishonest. I don't. I just don't trust that. I don't trust people are experiencing what they think they are. One of the things one of the things that I
Cool.
learned in grad school was how memory and perception are not reliable at all, and why eyewitness testimony should be banned from the court system. um, but
Amen.
but to get back to what you're saying about the the LBRP versus a more like a
Full
greater
spirit
ritual.
evocation.
Yeah. Generally, when you're doing the LBRP, you're kind of in
And
control of what's going on,
let's
right?
be clear, I was talking about the LIRP, which
Oh,
because then
LRP.
the angels are facing inward. I
Oh,
say this only
fair
for
enough.
those who are learning out there, and we don't want to confuse them or think that
Yes.
we're willy-nilly, because we do
No,
know we
I
are.
was being willy-nilly.
Yeah, yeah, which you should know better. You've been a Hierophant, right?
I've actually never sat in that seat. I've been everything up to that, the Hegemon, the Harris, but I haven't been a Hierophant.
Yeah.
Um, but
Okay, so
anyway, but you're right. I was being sloppy. LIRP.
you're doing, yeah, you've
So
got the
you're kind of in control of what's going on, right? You're actively visualizing. You're like, okay, Raphael is yellow robes, and you're pretty much in control. You might have a feeling, and you might have, and that's great. But you're not. You're probably not going to be very surprised. Whereas if you are doing a greater invocation and you're not surprised, I'd say you're not really. If nothing happens that you are surprised by, then you probably didn't finish. You probably didn't do it right.
mm,
Um,
I like that.
I think that it what and that's sort of that to me is like the simplest kind of litmus is like when what you're experiencing starts to go off in ways that are both surprising but also coherent, right? Because that's kind of the hard part is that I think oftentimes when you're first starting, you're like controlling everything. Everything is just visualization. You just and then you start to loosen up a little bit, and the stability of your visualization is kind of starting to get a little bit stronger, and you can kind of relax the control a little bit, and then it's just sort of like noise. It's like kind of random, like weird stuff, like just thoughts pop into your head, and you're like, what's that going on? But when you get to a point where you're like actually having a conversation with somebody and you don't know what they're going to say next, and what they say next is not something that you would have said or would have wanted them to say, but that it makes sense and that it's something that you can kind of work with, that's when you're actually like having conversation.
Yeah.
That's how I see it anyway.
Yeah, of course. Cool. So any thoughts on this? I want to hear more. I'm just trying to figure out the best way to entice you to say more of your thoughts from the macro micro thing.
So yeah, I guess the way that I look at that from like the point of view of the brain and how that all works is, I don't think that if you evoke, Samael or whoever into a triangle or whatever, I don't think and this, you and I might disagree about this, that there actually is some objective entity out there that is coming in physically into your triangle.
Well, the word physical there could be problematic. Problematic.
Right. And
Yeah.
that's part of, and I use that term specifically to indicate what I don't believe, right? I don't, now, of course, as I was saying, you don't actually experience your physical triangle either. You experience a mental representation of that triangle. And so when that entity enters, it's happening outside of your conscious ego, which is just a little tiny piece of your brain right over here, probably. The part of your brain that actually has a self, that has a sense of like, this is me. It's actually really small. And what's being presented to it is being presented by this orders of magnitude bigger system, mind system. And it is, and that's where that's coming from. And it's not whether or not, you could, through any kind of scientific apparatus, say it's coming from anywhere outside of your own brain. Probably not, in my opinion. But that doesn't make it any less amazing. Because what the brain does is, the brain creates a whole universe for you.
At least if it's working right.
Yeah.
If you use the key and unlock the door.
Yeah, I don't know. There's some other things that I thought might be interesting to you that I'm doing.
So, quick little break there. Where were we? Yeah, do you want to talk more about that? Or here's a question.
Yeah.
Who is this course for? Is it for people who are curious about modern magic or ceremonial magic but aren't ready to take the leap, or is it people who are just looking for a similar but different pathway?
Yeah. So the people for this particular course, the people who I have in mind are mostly people who I think would find the techniques of magic interesting, but who would never think to approach it. Maybe it's too weird, it's too off their radar, it's too, but so that's the kind of the first person who I have in mind. The second person I have in mind is probably somebody who's actually a little bit more like me, who is somebody who is interested in magic, but gets turned off by some of the outrageous claims that people make about this and that and the other thing that are without substantiation or something like that. Like, I remember listening to an interview with somebody who's talking about how, if you go into fairyland and eat the food there, that you won't come back. I'm like, does this person actually believe that? And why would they say that? And
that's the mythology.
That's the mythology, but he was presenting it as like, this is a fact. And like, all right, where is it,
well, I was offered some pomegranate seeds at a gay club once, so maybe if I had eaten them, they would have kept me.
You would never come back. We wouldn't be having this conversation right now. And this is coming from somebody who is like a noted and respected, I respect them as an author. I mean, they're, very, very scholarly, but it's just like, how do you, I find it difficult to kind of engage with that kind of writing where it's just like, are you crazy? Are you being allegorical? Do you not, and so I'm kind of trying to present a way to approach that material that doesn't fall into that allows you to kind of interpret that without necessarily believing or feeling like you're being expected to believe things that don't line up with what we know about how the universe actually works. The two other, I have two other courses that I'm working on. One I actually developed way back when I was in seminary.
Yeah, you were in seminary too. That's right.
Yes.
We talked about that before. You, for those who don't know, you video called me when I was, in California during the fires and early COVID stuff, and that was very nice. Yeah, we were gonna get together, and then you're like, let's do it on Zoom, and I was like, all I do is stare at a computer. I need to see human beings. That was the
I
Yeah,
know it
that
was
was
hard though. That
something.
was not a good
Oh
time
yeah. Oh, it was, well,
for all of
it's
us.
been it's been unending,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
according to Trudeau, it's going to continue to 2024 at least. Oh yeah, we're just starting to lock down, man. We're just getting going. When I came back to Canada on the solstice of September or equinox in September, no one was masking in stores. Like they hadn't even started
Oh
masking.
my
We didn't
gosh.
start masking till October.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
that whole time where things were going crazy in the States, had I been able to had Canada let me come back right away,
Mhm.
we would have been pretty much wide open, getting 2K a month from the government each. I missed all of that, trapped in Cali. So that was catastrophic to say the least. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so yeah, we're just getting going on this stuff. I don't know. It's
Well,
gonna be,
yeah.
I mean, here in Vancouver, people are like, fuck it, whatever. Or they're all at the beach. They don't like, no one. Vancouver's special, and gets special sort of considerations from the rest of Canada, because we can be like, look, there's this place that's good, and then the other places get punished, and this place is open.
Mm,
It's a mess,
yeah,
it's a mess. Anyway,
yeah.
um, yeah, so that was really great to almost connect with you a
Yeah,
bit.
sort of connect.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, we had so many.
As much as it was
I had to
possible.
cancel a whole book tour. I had to cancel that whole conference.
Yeah,
I had a whole conference
yeah.
with guests lined up. Everything was ready to go. The whole property, everything. It was like Hermeticon. It was just wiped
Okay.
off the map, and
Wow.
the book tour and everything. It was crazy. But for those who don't know, we met at my legendary lecture at PantheaCon.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Although I was right behind you, so you couldn't see me.
I couldn't
But
see you. I did not expect an auditorium with that number of people.
it was packed. It was a great lecture. I mean, it was fantastic.
Yeah,
Um,
it was the Hermetic, W.B. Yeats's Hermetic Order of Celtic Mysteries. Apparently that title
yep.
was a good one.
Yep.
And it
Got
was,
everyone's attention.
yeah, like a couple hundred people in there. I wish I had been given some notice by them, but I was given the impression it would be like 20 people in a circle in a room, which is
Yep.
why this chairs were in a circle. So instead there was this auditorium with, it was a disaster. And then the cord for the microphone wouldn't stretch anywhere. And it was just, and the people my friends from the foundation who were going to do the filming and everything like that, they didn't even show up to the lecture. They were so pissed off that I had gotten accepted to give a lecture, and they didn't. One of them actually tried to one took a swing at me. He was so upset. This OTO
Oh
guy, this
no.
Lima, yeah, he was so pissed. Then I found out he has a history of this sort of shit going back to Oberon Zell's community, Anafin, and all these other places, and keeps changing the name people call him so people don't know it's him, and all this crazy stuff, man. Yeah.
So why are so many people in this field crazy?
Well, those, I don't consider those people in this field. Like,
Okay.
um, you know, uh, like you can put on whatever labels you want for yourself, right? But anyone who's ever actually earned any titles whatsoever, from a high school diploma onward, anything that's any title or or word that signifies an accomplishment, um, anyone who does that knows that the title is meaningless. What means something is what they accomplished. It means something
Right.
to them. It gives you so much to learn or achieve anything. The trophy is me. I've got a couple football MVP trophies over there from when I was a wee kid, before everyone got their growth spurts and I was still 5'3". But the trophies don't mean anything, but they remind me of how much energy, like, you don't get that, you don't beat out 100 other kids by not working hard. You do it by running faster, by focusing more, like all these things, even as a kid, especially as a kid, that you put yourself toward. I don't The words are the description of committing your entire being to something is almost too grand to describe in language when you really want to achieve something, right? It's this,
Hmm.
yeah, you give it your all, be all that you
Hmm.
can be, just do it. and yeah, so people throw these titles around. So if a guy wants to call himself a Thelemite, and then you know but
Yeah.
he's not acting it, like, you're not doing it. It's like, so you're a magician, do you practice any magic? No, like I've had people tell me that they don't need to practice magic or even read the books because owning the books is the same thing, which is sort of like, oh, I've been told this by many, like literally many people,
So
many
literally, so
many people.
having
Yeah,
a grimoire on your shelf means that
I
you
just
are.
go like this. I just hold it and I feel it first against one temple,
That's a nice
and then
nice volume there.
yeah, well, it's my this is my personal grade material. This massive thing. I just had it bound. Mainly because I like one side of pages of each page of grade material is blank usually because it's photocopied, right? And it's covered with my notes from
Sure.
many years. So, but yeah, and it goes to, but it's not a foreign idea. This idea of Madonna's Kabbalah, for example, and
Yeah.
Britney Spears, they would all give each other copies of the Zohar, 20 something, every volume.
Right.
And they believed that it was,
Just
sit with
having
it,
it.
holding
Yeah.
it, put under your pillow, put it above your door for protection. This idea is not new.
That's true, and it's not unique to the West either. I mean, you see the same thing with people chanting. What is it? The name of the Lotus Sutra. I forget what it
Om
is.
Namah Shivaya.
No.
No.
But it's same concept. It's but um, I forgot it. But anyway, yeah, that simply chanting then the title, the Lotus Sutra, in sort of Sino Sanskrit kind of is equivalent not only to reading the whole book, but to will eventually get you enlightened as if you had actually realized everything that was in that book. However, I will say, in defense of that approach, mantra is very effective, and saying a word over and over again until your mind stops running in circles does actually can be effective. Although I'm not sure if it's the same thing as reading a book and becoming enlightened. But.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, that was back to where, but yeah, it was very cool to meet. It was a very cool event. I'm sad that the world changed and careers took nosedives, but
Yeah.
we'll hopefully get back to it. As a result, as you can imagine, I had to just delay and then delay again the Order of Celtic Mysteries, which you and
I know. I'm
so
still
many.
waiting with bated breath
Well,
for the next lesson.
well, that will be this week. The first because the original event was always meant, the events are always going to be on Yates's birthday, and this year because we can't have an event, and now it looks like I won't be allowed to do one next year even either. Though I know if that's the case, I might just send everything I've done developed to Llewellyn or Weiser. I talked with them at Pantheacon. They'd be happy to publish anything I give them that, that's a real book, not just yeah. Not just collected
Oh,
writings from my
the
youth.
right, the
Yeah.
photographs that you're giving me of like I
Or
can't believe
whatever.
this.
Yeah. Yeah. So who knows what I'll do. But this week is all fairy magic for me. This week is all fairy
Cool.
magic. So this is a great podcast to start the week with here on a beautiful Monday at midday, and kick off a bit of that. So I'll let you know as a Order of Celtic Mystery lover and member, which again is open to everyone. This next Sunday is Yates's birthday, and yeah, I'm doing Demon Fest. So you can go to demonesdeasinversus.com and
Right.
register for Demon Fest. This is actually the last day you can go to demonesdeasinversus.com and register for like $14 just as a after, by some point today it'll switch over to a bit more, and I'll be putting out the first collection, the first major thing. And I've opened it up a bit to other people who are curious to get involved, because it's going to have to be whatever it is until, because it's all grounded on doing an initiation, right? This is not,
That's where it's going.
I'm not going to get together with my friends here in BC and astrally initiate everyone abroad. That's definitely not what's going to happen at any point ever. But I am putting together a kind of self-dedication rite that people could use, because why not? The Enochian initiatory system is completely self-initiation, which is something that I think a lot of people don't really realize. So when people are dissing self-initiation in general or struggling with it, it's like, well, there is a precedent for this being a thing. And you could argue that Enochian magic is the operative force within all Golden Dawn initiations.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, there will be, I've got releasing all the initial full mid-year working, and worked with an artist the last few months to get the image of the beautiful god, king of the fairies, mid-year or
Nice.
Mid-year or Mid-year or Midzir, depending on your dialect of Irish. But I'll go over all the stuff with people. But yeah, as well as, yeah, it's going to be lots of treats and fun things in the goodie bag, and all of that stuff will be presented. You'll have an email programmed later today, actually, to the Order of Celtic Mysteries about all of that. You'll get that, and everyone can show up and celebrate a little bit of Yeats on his birthday.
I remember having a mid-year gave me a nice little dream last year when I did when we first started. And
oh, really?
I don't remember if I Rudy a little bit. I didn't actually encounter mid-year himself, I don't think, but I saw a fairy circle in the ocean looking out over the cliffs, off the west coast of Ireland, and in the dream. And yeah, I don't know. That was the night that I had kind of meditated on, and I did your invocation of Midir, and yeah,
beautiful.
It was cool.
Yeah, that, well, it wasn't my invocation. That is W.B.
Yates's, yeah,
but
Yates's
only, you know, it's not in any of his published books, so that's for sure. So that will be, I did a full contact working with that evocation of that spirit in evocation up while I was in quarantine at Chris Bennett's place, and the major results of that 3-4 hour operation was to have him transmit and give to me. Well, he was physically right in front of me, with, especially I was doing a heroic operation, and gave me a sigil. And from that sigil, and then also the image that I've released of Midir that my friend worked with me on to do is adapted from, I gave her the image of Oberon from the grimoires, because the king of the fairies in England and Ireland, I figure, would have something in common. So let's create that commonality, like when you're invoking or evoking a spirit, how you want to, cite references to what they've done in the past, where they've been, what, who they are, and that sort of thing. So that's, I figure, a good connection there. Yeah, and the full sigil will be put around that, and so this full sigil I'll release to the OCM, and anyone who attends the birthday as well, as a bonus, though. Yeah, anyway, and then we'll have that sigil to do more direct workings, and I'll release a bunch of other stuff. Yeah, but again, the main things around the initiation. So until we can get together and do a physical initiation that 10-20 people can come to, I don't want to sort of turn it into some purely digital. Yeah, it's just,
yeah,
it doesn't make sense. It's so much a physical thing and being present. So hopefully the world will allow these things to happen again.
Yep. Yeah, and
that's what's happening.
I can, what you said about the self-initiation, I used to be very down on it, as like, oh, that's not a real initiation.
But we're going
that was
that.
Right. But then, I joined Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids, and that's what they do. And unless you're lucky enough to be with a grove that can do a physical initiation, but they give you all these, and it worked. I was like, okay, that actually works. That actually changed something in me.
Oh, wow.
So
you enjoyed I want to I don't want to move on from that. Because the Bards of 80s and Druids, I think, it's a pretty good order that I've talked to a lot of people about, and I've gotten some of their material in the past. So you actually had a powerful experience from your self-initiation through their system?
Yeah, and I was very skeptical of it when I was like reading through it, and I'm like, this is, whatever. I mean, I'll do it because, why not? But then, I did it sincerely, and I really made sure I set the setting, and I was like, oh wow, that did something, that worked. There's something to it. I mean, I wonder, it's funny. When I was corresponding with my mentor, I just finished the Ovate. I just started their Druid grade recently, so I just finished the Ovate grade.
Congrats.
Thank you. I think that I've definitely benefited from so many years of magical training before even starting OBOD. So that probably helps. But I can definitely, I will say that it is effective. And as you said, like the Enochian stuff, that's there's a whole Enochian self-initiation tradition. But of course, as you well know, as why you want to do this in the first place, is that a physical in-person initiation with people is categorically different. Right?
Yeah.
It's almost like I almost feel like it shouldn't even be the same word. It's like those are just two different things.
To that, I will say something I've realized that I might not have said in the past, because I got to go through 2 astral initiations of Neophyte and Zelator before I then went through the physical ones, and then it was physical everything thereafter.
Okay.
And just in general, over those 7 initiations from Neophyte to Adeptus Minor, the experience I had though was that there was grades in which I felt like I was in that grade before the ceremony, and that I really needed the ceremony to sort of help me with the energies I was starting to experience. Sometimes we call that, the person's alchemy is going sour because they've been in the grade too long, or they or whatever. They're just like the other elements coming in, you can sort of feel it. Though traditionally, of course, the GD doesn't use that as a basis for determining whether someone should move on. As Frater Yeshi always likes to tell me, if you pass the test, you get to go up the grade, which I think is a great way of doing it. There can be judging someone's spiritual progress can lead to many problems. So I think it's good that the Golden Dawn fundamentally remain a pass fail grade system. Like, did you pass the test without really any mistakes? Basically, yes. Okay, there you go. It's your journey, not mine. But yeah, so there is a spiritual thing. Sometimes it felt like the spiritual thing and the physical initiation were happening at the same time. Sometimes it felt like the spiritual initiation happened after the initiation. So I've noticed those 3 different things. There's things happening on so many levels with that.
And
what was your experience of going through the Golden Dawn? Because you went through a very unique kind of temple.
It was unique, and I don't know how unique it was. I mean, it was unique in that it was nobody's ever heard of it.
Right.
It's the Order of the Sevenfold Star. So unless you were in New York in the early 2000s, there's no chance that you would have ever heard of it. And even if you were, you probably wouldn't have. But it was, as I told you when we talked before, it was started by a fellow who had an initiation by somebody who was not in the Golden Dawn tradition, who was, I would say, as a witch, who came from a very eclectic tradition, but she initiated him in a way that was kind of blew him open and led to him doing the Abramelin operation, and then from that went and started this order. And so it has no lineage, which I mean, in some ways I like, in some ways is kind of, sad, because of course nobody knows, I have no whatever. But yeah, so we went through the whole thing. And it actually, it's something that I think is so valuable, that I want more people to have access to it. And so that was what led me to wanting to teach this class when I was in seminary, which I never actually did do, but I wrote up the whole syllabus for it and figured out how I was going to do it, was essentially to teach the Golden Dawn, the historical Golden Dawn, soup to nuts, do read-throughs, table reads of the initiations, with the idea that people who attended that class would be able to go and start their own orders, if they wanted to. And if not, they could just use it for their own personal stuff, because it's too hard. I mean, there's a lot of orders out there, but I don't know. I feel like all the orders that are out there, not all, present company accepted, of course.
I'm not in any order.
Well, you've started several, right?
No, never really. I mean, other than the Celtic Mysteries project, I had a Wiccan coven in high school.
Oh, I thought you. Okay, I'm mistaken.
What did you think I
Um,
started?
I don't remember. I thought that you started. Wasn't there one that you were involved in that had like a shelf life? Like it had a 7-year or 5-year.
No, no,
Am I thinking of somebody
no.
else entirely? Okay,
Maybe.
sorry.
I mean, the that's sort of the magical order model that Nineveh Shadrach, who started Temple Tahuti, followed after he left our order
Okay.
due to
Okay.
disagreements about using jinn and Arabic magic and integrating that into our second
Yeah.
order. They didn't want that, so it's like go do your own thing, and he did.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I was a
I joined
member
it
of
and
Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn International.
uh,
Um,
right.
and then in the States, during when Griffin copyrighted, trademarked the name, they had to change it to
I know
Hermetic Order of the
Tomsey
Morning Star. We didn't
Star.
have to change it in Canada. We stayed incorporated as Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn.
Okay. Okay.
And that's one of the reasons why Griffin like broke through our temple door during a neophyte initiation and assaulted our fulaks. Yeah, like,
Right.
which is stupid.
So that's my case in
You
point.
don't assault a woman, a kick-ass woman taller than you carrying a claymore. But yeah, he got forced out at sword point. What kind of fucking jackass can sell themselves as a spiritual anything and intentionally disrupt ceremonies performed for a candidate who's not even a neophyte yet? Like, what a
Yeah.
evil thing to do. Like him breaking into a church during a baptism and like, like, go fuck yourself, man.
Yeah. I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
that's beyond the pale. I can't even. Yeah. Well, that's why the Sentinel is armed. Of
that's
course.
it. I finally learned the real purpose of a sentinel. We all
Yeah.
did. It's like, oh, there are nut jobs out there like David Griffin who will
Yeah.
literally break and enter to interrupt a ceremony. And yeah, like, as I've said many times to my listeners, you'll all know what I'm about to say. He's lucky that he was in Canada, because in the States that sword might have gotten pushed a bit further forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she
No,
didn't
that
know who he
was
was. Had no idea who he was. It was just a criminal.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you do that in the States. Well,
Yeah.
that's changing now anyway. Yeah, so that was the order I went through the grades in. And what I
Okay.
think is fascinating about your temple is that it is a great example of the fact that you don't need to necessarily go join any order. You can build your own temple. Frater Demna in Ireland gave a great little bit on my podcast, though I have to do another interview with him because we had really bad connection, and I left it up even though it's really hard to listen to. But because some of the things he said were so good, I'm like, oh my god, I can't. If you have to search through this for sorry for the poor reception we had up in the mountains, but he points out he went through and made all the tools for a temple to show people,
Mhm. Mhm.
using like, cardboard tubes and everything.
Mhm.
Like, you could probably cut a milk carton to make the top
Mhm.
of a higher. And he's like, he made like the whole temple for like a couple $100, and he
I want
wanted
to
to show
know how he
people.
did that.
Yeah, so I want to get him to come back on and talk more about that and stuff. But yeah, you can go make your own temple. It could be a
Mhm.
better thing to have a small group working temple and work yourselves through these things. That's essentially what the original order was anyway.
Yeah, and I love that idea. Just, I mean, one of the things that is so hard with this sort of magic is all the tools, and there's like the proper way to make it, and it's very involved. And I really like I like that, and it reminds me of what Lon Milo Duquette in Angel Vision or Anarchan Vision Magic, I think it's called. He basically shows you how to make like a paper magic ring, and he's like, hey, if a paper magic ring doesn't work for you, a gold one isn't going to work either.
I use that. I use a paper
Yeah,
magic ring. And yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Like,
yeah, yeah, it works. It's
it's less
um,
likely to be stolen.
that's true. I did actually try to buy a gold one on Etsy, and I think the seller like kind of mysteriously decided to not make it. And I was wondering if it was like somebody finally told her what it was for or something like that.
Oh, yeah, I was
I don't
talking
know.
to Rye Villa this morning. He does a Praxis Behind the Obscure podcast. he had someone in Korea make his at a very good price, like silver plated in gold, and that's yeah, there's some nice ones. Jason Newcomb probably has the nicest, most affordable one in the States available for 149. It's gold plated, beautiful ring. But once you get it shipped to Canada, it's like it comes to over $200 with, you know, so that's a lot. It might be
Stick
better
with the
to have
paper one.
a local manufacturer or something like that. I don't know. So yeah, it was cool. I think it's great that you guys had this independent temple, and it was interesting. You actually mentioned to me that you ended up being sort of a home for many members of our order when, over a decade after I was gone, it finally broke apart into several different orders.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
many students of it had none of those new orders near it, or had just had enough of the drama and found your group. And that's amazing.
Yep.
That's a wonderful thing. That's really the strength that we could have if we have even independent temples that are at least. So if you're out there and you have a little independent order or temple, maybe let some other people like me know about it, so that if there's cool people in your area, like really good people, I always tell people, like, if you can join a local temple, that is the best way to do it. And
Yeah.
more than ever, and we saw Fellowship of the Golden Dawn Universum has just split apart as well. They're now two. Yeah, well, they were split, but since before that original split, they were two different things. Then when I was in England, they were talking about coming together. They did come together. Now they've re-separated a little bit again. I mean, that it's fine. It's fine. It doesn't. We don't need massive orders like ours was when I was there, with over 1,000 members internationally. It's great because you can put together these amazing international week-long events at no expense to the members virtually, and even help them attend. That's cool. That is a cool thing that you can do with large numbers. And that's the only thing I think that is worth noting about those large groups that you can get. Plus more camaraderie, more people, more like minds. But yeah, small local temples, I think, is a good thing. If we could all work a little bit more together, it could be a very powerful thing.
Yeah. Although, well, one thing I will say that we learned the hard way with that was recognizing. So there were a couple adepts, I think. A couple of adepts who were kind of like, okay, well, you're already an adept, so we can just, so we'll just wave you through and you'll be an adept in our order. Wasn't a good idea. We kind of learned that recognizing another order's degree grades, while it's not that, like, you've gone through the alchemy, but there's an individual alchemy, and then there's also there's the alchemy of the group, right? Of the order. And if you bring somebody in at a higher grade that they haven't gone through the grade in the order, it does something weird. And I don't know, maybe there's a way to do it that isn't dysfunctional, but in our case, it definitely caused a lot of problems.
Well, I don't think it would make sense if someone's in practicus in one order, it doesn't make sense to bring them in practicing order, because it's so they can easily, they haven't completed the cycle, start that cycle again. But if you're a 5-6, you can't go back and go through that process again. Just like it's in the Bible, even, like, you can't re-enter the womb. There's no second baptism. You can't change that. True. So to end, I believe it's incredibly. I know people who have done that, like Eric Sisko went through ours, went through Den Griffin's, and then Chick's all the way through, and that's fine. He's a crazy man. I love him. But I believe it can cause problems, and also, here's the main point though. 5-6 is the beginning grade. It's of a different order. You're not going above anything. You're at the beginning grade. So it would make sense to admit adepti as adepti, because they're at the beginning of a wholly separate order. The RRAC is nothing to do with the Golden Dawn whatsoever.
That's right.
It's a separate order that can initiate people directly into it, in fact, without going through the Golden Dawn, if it wants to. And I have seen it done, and I've been a voting member in cases where that was an issue. And there's good reasons for that that you can guess, but I can't say, usually to do with health, because there's powerful energies that we unlock in that grade. But so yeah, that would be admitting. So I think it's good that the Sodalitas Rosea Crucis, it has honorable uh, uh, honorary adepti membership to acknowledge the otherwise there's no future for the orders, for the temples. There's no way we could ever work
There's no
together
way they can
if
get there,
I say I will never recognize who you are or what you are ever unless I approve it my way. That's something no one can take. Even the Christian church. If I'm a, if I was married, if I get married, if you and me got married, we could do this in the Anglican church, in the Episcopalian church. If you and me got married, and no, that wouldn't work. No, that wouldn't work. You'd have to be a woman, because we're talking about. And I reconverted, and I went back to the Roman Catholic Church. I would be a married priest in the Roman Catholic Church, and there are married priests in the Roman Catholic Church, because they can't unmake you a priest.
Right.
You're still a priest.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right. And in fact, the example that I was thinking of, I was wrong. It wasn't an adept. The adept who came in was fine. It was the other example that you said of somebody who came in, I think at like Philosophus or something like that.
Yeah, mid-alchemy.
Mid-alchemy, and that was where it was like, this was weird.
Yeah, that would be weird, because then you're opening the alembic, the vessel, mid experiment, and transferring the fluid.
Right. That's right.
Oh, yeah. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good way of putting it. What was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, about orders. And yeah, so one of the things that, I've kind of come to the conclusion that orders should be ephemeral. Because it does seem like, or it seems like that's just the way it is. If you think about, even long-lived orders, they're, like once Paul Foster Case died, like the BOTA wasn't what it was, right?
Yeah.
And the original Golden Dawn only lasted like 15 years. And all this, like all these orders just don't last long. And maybe that's okay. Like maybe that's, and a lot of them tend to be powered by an individual personality, which is of course, it's arguably problematic in the first place, but it can also work so long as it's kept in check to a certain degree. I don't know. What do you think of that? Do you think it should be?
What do I think of that? Pardon can you hear that?
Not really.
Oh, okay. Massive loud beeping in my ears. How would you phrase that differently? What do I think of that?
Well, I'm just wondering, you were talking about these big orders, and that, maybe that's not maybe
the big order. There was just one big one.
The big order. Okay, yeah.
I don't know how big Chicks is, but yeah, I don't think it's over 1,000 members.
Really?
I don't think it's over 1,000 dues paying members. No, I like, especially like just reading from what I've heard. Aaron Leach is a senior adept in that order, and he said on Glitch Bottle that he only does his ritual work like once a week or something like that. So I don't think they have like weekly classes or daily programs or even that much of monthly events. And there's a lot of other groups I know that have had to take their temples down and sort of under the radar, and they're trying to survive basically and keep serving their members. But it's a hard thing during COVID.
Yeah.
I said the bad word. I said the C word. Shouldn't have said that. I'm in trouble online now. We've got these new laws coming into play in Canada where they want to actually be able to like censor our private communications if we make fun of politicians or stuff like that.
Oh dear.
It's happening. We're going full.
People's Republic of Canada.
Trudeau's favorite country is China. That's what he says. We should be just like them. He wants to be just like them. Yeah.
I hope I don't see you in a re-education camp. But anyway.
I wouldn't last long.
True. So I guess there aren't really many big orders, but the idea of like, and maybe I guess what I'm saying is like maybe that's okay. Like
I
maybe
think it is. I think it's good.
smaller, orders is better. Maybe it's just, maybe it's just a matter of like, we need to have this sort of cellular structure where we can communicate with each other better, and maybe even refer people to each other better. Like if I know somebody, in Canada, in Vancouver, I could refer them to you, and I don't know.
That's what I'm doing. Like I have a whole page on my website that basically is an advertisement to not work with me. It's like, here's 7 other people I recommend you work with if
Right.
you're near them.
Yeah.
Do that. And I'm doing that, even though it hurts me in some ways, or in some people's perspective, because I'm trying to teach by example.
Right.
My fellow teachers and other
Yeah.
people who are teaching and claim to be leaders, but so many of them, it seems, are taking the stance that my way is the only right way, every other way is wrong. I've heard John King is very, very explicitly clear about that in his work. Even Josephine McCarthy, I've heard her on the Glitch Bottle several times say, if you do this thing any other way, you're stupid. It's like, okay, well, I guess I'm an idiot tarot reader because I don't know how to use tarot cards right. I can't even touch them right, apparently. It's like, as much as I want to promote other people doing good work, it's hard when they take that stance. And this brings us back, actually, I think, to what you're up to, and the cognitive neuroscience approach. Like, what's that say about this mentality? Like, it's fine if we think someone's wrong about this. Like, I prefer this Enochian pronunciation method over this method, right? I think this one, and then I think this other one's just is bonkers. That's fine. But there's a difference between thinking and not wanting to do what someone else does, or thinking that it's not as good for you, and saying that it's objectively wrong.
Right.
Right. If it's not my way, it's the highway.
And there's no, like, how can that, it's hard for me to understand how anyone in the 21st century can believe that. Like, how could you, I mean, we live in such a
I don't think
plurality of
people do.
cultures.
I don't think people do believe it. So then, therefore, the real question maybe is, why are teachers acting this way and saying that? Because I don't think anyone does buy that. If you do buy that mentality that only one person's right and everyone else is wrong, then you're probably already a member of Griffin's Order and happy as a clam, and more, go for it. Enjoy your Thule Society.
Well, I told you about how I got kicked out of an order because I was asking too many questions.
Oh yeah, tell that story. That's fun, because you got kicked out of an order by John Greer's wife, am I right?
Yeah, well, I mean, she was a spokesperson, but apparently it was, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't, it was, so this was their Druidical Order of the Golden Dawn. And I was really excited to come across it. I was like, I'm getting into Druidry. I have this Golden Dawn background, and I kind of want to combine the two. And somebody already did. Cool. I can kind of ride their coattails and kind of follow what they're doing. I picked up the book. I was kind of confused at first because there were no grade initiations. There were self-initiations for the Ovate Bard and Druid grade. They put it in that order: Ovate Bard Druid instead of Bard Ovate Druid.
Yeah, I read the Celtic Golden Dawn.
Yeah, but they didn't have and I'm like, is it Golden Dawn? I mean, the whole, like, the Golden Dawn is founded on the cipher manuscripts. So is it even Golden Dawn? But I'm like, okay, whatever. It's, the more I got into it, I was like, okay, this is still, regardless, it's cool. Yeah. And it's impressive. Like, it's a really impressive, synthesis that he put together. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and join the order.
Yeah, I don't see that stuff in here. Do you?
Yeah, there's not much not much Celtic in there, as you well know, being an expert in that particular domain.
I gotta say, yeah, as much I was excited by the Celtic Golden Dawn book as well. I'm a fan of Greer across the board. I really do like that guy. I have a lot of respect for him. And I love that he's pursued the Welsh Brythonic mysteries, which is what galvanized me to do what I'm doing, actually, to finish what I'm doing, because I was always hoping someone else would do it and I could just experience it. But he went Welsh, and that was an early decision I noticed I had to make in around 96, 97 when I was starting my research for my first book. And I realized I had to make a decision between the Brythonic and the Gaelic traditions,
Mm-hmm.
there
Mm-hmm.
being 3 within each. And he went, when I realized he went Brythonic and Welsh, I was like, perfect. Okay, then I am meant to finish what I'm doing on the Gaelic side of that branch of the Celtic. And but with that book, with the Celtic Golden Dawn, because he's done a few of these adaptation sort of things, here's what was floored me. I read it, and it showed to me, it read to me, it presented to me as being written by someone. I would have expected that what that would have been the product of someone who had zero knowledge of the Golden Dawn. And given
Right.
it was Greer who
Right.
just did the new edition of the GD book, which corrects a lot of old mistakes and makes a bunch of new ones. Yay.
Mm.
That's why we need new editions, right? To create new
Yeah.
mistakes. And oh God.
Right.
Um what that he should how could he have done? I don't know how he could have written it. Like that would be
It's
something I'd love
funny.
to talk. How I don't give it to me, and I could go through. Maybe sometime I'll go step
Yeah.
by step through that book and be like, here's where this doesn't make sense. Like to me, if someone knew the Golden Dawn as well as Greer does, and then
Mm.
wanted to make a Celtic Golden Dawn, there's a bunch of things that are super obvious, especially
Right.
structurally, that would make sense, and none of them were there. And it just didn't doesn't make sense to me to this day about why it made this choices. I don't know why.
It's more, it's almost more like a Golden Dawn Celtica than a Celtic Golden Dawn. Because I think that by putting, but there are things that he does that I think display a really sophisticated understanding of the Golden Dawn stuff. So, for instance, when he creates his Celtic version of the Lesser Ritual of the Pentagram, he does he makes sure to, like, the god names that he uses in the 4 directions, they're all 4 letters long. They balance the positive and negative, and all this stuff that is built into the Hermetic Lesser Ritual of the Pentagram, but is not very well documented. Like if you haven't been working it or working with people who know it well, you wouldn't necessarily know that. And most versions, most adaptations, like when I've seen so many Enochian versions of the Lesser Ritual of the Pentagram, none of them do that. They don't they'll do all kinds of interesting things, but they don't follow, they take more liberties with the formula than he did. He was actually
Yeah.
So there are things like that that I was really impressed by.
That's
And
cool. Yeah.
But there was this, like, I signed up for their order. And part of it was like, okay, great, now I have somebody to ask questions, because like what you were saying, like you have all these questions, I have all these questions. So one of the first one was a typo. There were 2 versions of he, rather than using Hebrew letters, he uses the geomantic symbols, which isn't really Celtic, but whatever.
There's an example of one of the things that pissed me off. It's
Yeah.
like, he didn't really, yeah, like there's so many. Anyway, I don't want to complain about it too much because it's
Yeah.
just, I that it just leaves more for me to include and make sense out of it. It's really a gift. He's given me a tremendous gift by the things he's ignored. So God bless him. God bless him.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, I think well, when I first approached them, I said, I said like, hey, I'm an adept in an order. I'm really interested in Celtica. I want to do something kind of like what you're doing. I would love to talk to you about, and my first correspondence, which was maybe a bad idea. This was maybe, just foolish on my part, but I reached out to them saying, hey, I noticed the thing that I said to you, that they don't you don't have grade initiations in your book. Do you have those? And if so, would you be willing to share them? And if not, would you want to collaborate on developing them? Which, I realized was maybe a lot to ask or suggest, but I didn't necessarily expect it to be, they were like deeply offended by this question.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And then a year later, when I actually sign up, they're like, you're just gonna want to steal this and do your own thing anyway. So, so I was like off to a bad start with them.
yeah.
And then I started asking questions about like things like, wet alchemy, and they're like, you're trying to innovate. People who try to innovate are, just they're fools. Just do everything in the book exactly as it is. Don't vary it at all. Going back to what you were saying about, people who think that their way is the only way. Which of course it feels very hypocritical to me, because the whole Celtic Golden Dawn is itself an innovation, is itself a synthesis.
Yeah, I can see their point though. They're saying they're not necessarily saying this way is the only way. They're saying, look, we've written a book,
Yeah.
and we're helping people do what's in the book, and that's it. That's sort of fair.
Yeah, except that, I don't know. It's like, the thing that was sort of funny was like, I happen to have fresh vervain, which I've been growing because of my work in OBOD. And there's a thing about making a vervain tincture with dried vervain. And so I wrote them saying, hey, I happen to have fresh vervain. Would it be appropriate to use that in the tincture? And if not, is there some other use for it? And so the answer to the question, which was a good answer, which was no. The tincture is made with dried vervain. If you change it, it won't work right. Okay, that's good to know. And wet alchemy is a different skill, and you'll get into that later. Okay, cool. I'm glad to know that. I didn't know that. That wasn't clear. And then came this sort of like, how dare you, ask questions beyond what is in the grade material? Like, okay, that's not how you teach.
Did they actually kick you out?
Eventually, yeah. They didn't actually, no, they didn't technically kick me out. They put me. They said they banned me from posting to the news group, which, by the way, was completely silent until I arrived and completely silent after I left.
They weren't looking for active members, maybe more passive members. Pay your dues and shut up.
Exactly.
I'm gonna try that with my students next time they ask me a question. I'm gonna be like, shut up.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah. It's like, you don't ask, you're not allowed to post. You've been banned from posting for 3 months. Then you must be re-examined for the first grade, and you must do everything exactly as it is without any variation. And
I've heard of those operating practices before. Where have I heard of them? Some online platforms. Oh, right, all of them.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So yeah, that was sort of like, okay, well, that's disappointing.
Yeah, that really sucks, because they lost a really awesome member in you, really, and if you were the only one active on their boards of all their members.
I was starting conversations. Like, people were responding to what I was bringing up their own stuff, and
how dare you act like a true adept?
And somebody was like, "Oh,
together,
I'm working on this People of Space thing." And I'm like, "Oh, that's cool. Tell me more about that." And then they get mad at me for talking about the Cube of Space. Anyway.
Wow. Yeah. What a way to crush the human spirit.
Yeah.
And
it's sad, because it's like, it's such, like, Guru knows this stuff. Like, reading, reading that book was really, and reading about his work on geomancy, which again is not Celtic at all, but it's cool. It's really interesting stuff. But
people who like geomancy want to include it in everything. And that's good. I'm glad there's people out there that are into it, because I'm not, and they're keeping it alive. But yeah, I don't think it has any place in anything Celtic whatsoever.
But neither does the Hebrew alphabet, so
Well, it does have a place in the order of Celtic mysteries, because that's what Yeats intended.
That's right. Because
that's the beauty. That's the beauty of his vision, was to create an order of Celtic mysteries that was fused with the Golden Dawn. That was his vision. Right. Golden Dawn magic with using Golden Dawn methodologies and magic to explore the Celtic mysteries, and to engage with those spirits and gods and Ogam, Oam, and everything else. So there it was intended from the beginning, which is and mixing Hebrew names with using a Hebrew divine name to govern a Irish god has precedent in all magical traditions. Look at the entire PGM virtually almost every extent, like Adonai in Jewish religion is not a Hebrew name. It's not,
Hmm.
right. This is an Ugaritic word essentially that also
Oh,
spawned the name Adonis. Adonis and Adonai both come from,
okay.
have the common root of the Ugaritic word Yadun, apostrophe
Huh.
dn if in English orthography, and it means Lord. So like, and other names, Elion, like God the Most
Yeah,
High
that one
in
I
the
knew.
Hebrew
Yeah.
Bible. Yeah, there's a long history of using divine names from older languages or other languages interacting with that. That's not even syncretism. That's just tradition. That's culture
Yeah.
at work.
Right. That's right. I've been reading a lot of Peter Gray recently. Do you know Peter Gray?
Oh, how come that rings a bell?
He became pretty well known with his Rewilding Witchcraft book and Apocalyptic Witchcraft. Sorry, Rewilding
No.
Witchcraft was a talk, and Apocalyptic Witchcraft is a book. Um, he's he wrote the Red Goddess. I think that was his first book. And he's really into Babylon. But I've been reading his Lucifer Principus, and has a really interesting kind of exegesis of the Bible from a pagan Canaanite kind of perspective of like, okay, we don't know much about the Canaanite religion and the Babylonian tradition, but a big resource for us is actually the Bible. Just like prior to the Nag Hammadi library, everything that we knew about Gnosticism was written by its critics. So it's the same kind of thing. We're like, okay, in the Genesis 3 with Adam and Eve, how that's actually uh, a revision of an older story of basically Eve as this like priestess of the snake goddess who initiates Adam. Anyway, it's kind of a neat.
Well, Genesis 3 was written by what we call the Yahwist in
Right.
in in uh, in biblical criticism terms, right? So that's actually the oldest chunk of
Mhm.
Genesis, and it would predate any form of Gnosticism.
No, it predates any form of Gnosticism, yes,
Yeah.
but it doesn't predate. Sorry, I
Okay.
was conflating two things. What I was saying about Gnosticism was about how before what we know about prior to the Nag Hammadi library, most of what we knew about Gnosticism was written by its critics.
Oh yeah.
So most of what we know today about the pre-Hebraic Canaanite religion was
Mm,
written by the Hebrews.
yeah.
So the Hebrews were basically were taking the Canaanite myths and flipping them over, or doing things like that. And so that's
Darn
how we
dirty
can
Canaanites.
exactly.
Yeah.
So we can read about what the religion was like when we read about all the things that the Hebrews were forbidden from doing.
So we should really, the Israelites were hill tribes that gathered together loosely in association in the hills of Cana, and
Mhm.
basically usurped Canaanite
Mhm.
culture and took it over. So
Mhm.
really, what we should be holding is Canaanite flags rather than Palestine or Israel ones, and holding
I like it.
save
Let's make everybody
Cana.
angry.
See, you like that? It wouldn't be my podcast if I didn't throw one grenade like that out there. We need a Canaanite flag, a Canaanite religion. We need to respect Canaanite culture. First, we have to find out what it is, of course. But hey, John Greer could maybe help us out there. He's good with that sort of stuff. Yeah, no, anyway. um, what were we talking about? It's so good to see you,
Syncretism.
man. It's
Yeah.
so good to see you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for my exclusive members, you can get the video of this on magicwithoutfears.com or hermeticpodcast.com, because they keep banning my URLs all over the internet. I have to always buy new URLs and make new aliases because yeah.
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 Thinking about aliases and magical names, and I just think I should have a pseudonym. I don't use my magical motto very publicly because I feel like it's if you're not in that sphere, it's just like weird. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
um
when I started getting more public, I tried to just use my name like I did at, Pantheacon. I had my name and Frater RC in parentheses. But yeah, no, the death threats to my family got severe fast. And
Oh dear.
oh yeah, yeah, and threats to just, yeah, and real ones, like,
Oh boy.
well, we're gonna run your mom over with the car if you don't go away, blah blah blah.
I mean, what was so getting people riled up? I mean, what?
Oh, a lot of people after I went silent after Temple Tahuti closed after a few years. I think a lot of things happened. Mainly it's people like Griffin, his order, and other kinds of people like that. There are people in those spheres that are very they believe in might makes right. They believe that they have the right to steal or kill whoever they want because God authorizes them. This is a problem in human
Yeah.
life in general, across the board in every
Yeah.
arena. And in Canada, unfortunately, you don't really have the right to defend yourself or protect yourself. The cops have no interest in upholding any kind of laws at all. Yeah,
I'm in Oakland. It's,
yeah, yeah.
know.
Well, but there at least at least there you can sort of protect yourselves. If someone breaks into your house, you have
That's true.
you're losing the right, but you sort of still have the right to defend yourself at least.
Oh, sure.
Here you don't like
Mhm.
the person whose house they got broken into is more likely to get arrested than the people breaking in, even if they're caught in the act.
Mhm. Mhm.
And a lot of Canadians are going to get mad when I say that, but including close friends of mine who have already gotten mad at stuff I've said on this podcast about our medical system and stuff. But it's like, I'm sorry, I've been through this multiple times, um,
Mhm.
and it's real. If you haven't spent like 1 year alone, I was had 6 trips to the emergency room because of this, in 1 year alone, in 2018. So yeah, 2017, 2018, yeah. It's yeah, there's a lot of scumbags out there, and we all need to be, oh yeah, be awake, be aware. Yeah, it's our you have the right to protect your life and human dignity, in my opinion. And if the country you live in doesn't agree with you, well, then you're in a real pickle.
I remember. I think I might have told you this when we talked before. I used to take was Bagua Zhang, form of kung fu in New York with a guy. I'm blanking on his name right now, but he said that martial arts doesn't make you a better person. It just makes you more of who you are.
Mm,
So if you are a good person, you'll be a better person. But if you're an asshole, you'll be a bigger asshole. And I think the same is true with magic. I think it's just sort of like an amplifier.
yeah,
I don't think it makes people better. It just makes people more.
I think there's definitely something to that. Um, yeah, yeah, I
um,
had disagreements with like my old friend back in the day who now runs the Lesky's order, and he believed if someone was a criminal or a killer or a drug dealer that they should join the Golden Dawn because it'll make them into a good person. But he was
mhm.
a drug dealer at the time, and he it didn't make him a better person. It made him a person that wreaked damage on mine and my family's life that will never that it ruined my family. It destroyed my family, like flat out. He destroyed it. He ripped it apart. Me and my sister will never have a close relationship because of what he did to her. So not really, not like yeah, it it's stuff. Though it's good that we talk about this a bit. I don't shy away from this stuff. No fears, no fear. Be without fear. This is magic without fears, because fear is failure. So and yeah, more important now than ever probably to talk about this stuff, since we may see an internet in the very near future in which none of this kind of thing can be said at all, and this might be the last chance to say a lot of things that we all want to say to each other on a global scale before we don't get to talk anymore, without complete yeah we're most a lot of my friends in Canada completely cut off from any sort of method that you can see them online, or they're gonna wear masks on any video they go, because they will come for you, and if you think they won't, this is how fascist regimes and totalitarian autocracies start. This is exactly how it goes. This is exactly how Nazi Germany happened, what we're seeing happen right now in both our countries, because Canada is a testing ground for American policies, right? So they're testing out on us what they want to be able to do to you, as always. This is why Canada exists, for the States. Scary, huh? This is fucking terrifying.
Well, I don't know.
Have a great week, folks. Oh, it's Tuesday. It's not even Monday. Why did I think it was Monday? Oh,
yeah.
The beautiful day.
Well, because yesterday was, well, I guess I was going to say because yesterday was Memorial Day, but that wouldn't affect you. But.
Yeah, no, I wish many people, yeah. No, it's beautiful weather here though. Like the best days you could. This is ideal. Like it's amazing weather. So I'm gonna hit the seawall again after this, and oh, beautiful. So there's lots to be grateful for. But yeah, we do need to. I think we should appreciate these freedoms while we still have them, and use them for the best things we can use them for, which is probably to like raise a bit of awareness. I don't know.
Yeah.
It looks like things could get better sooner, but who knows? I don't know, man.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know, pandemic wise, things are definitely looking good in the States, but of course that neglects the whole rest of the world where, the virus can mutate and
yeah,
who knows.
My friends in Australia can't leave. Like,
yeah.
They lost their tours and they're still, not allowed to. Whew. Well, how do we get?
Yep. And
what are we doing?
With the censorship? I got off Facebook a while back, but I had to get back on in order to promote this thing that I'm doing. And I like to say that I'm on Facebook to try to get people off of it, because the way in which that kind of just messes with people's heads, it's no bueno.
No.
But anyway.
So what was your favorite officer role in the Golden Mountain? What was your favorite officer? Carrick's? Oh yeah. I actually wanted to be Carrick so bad, but by the time I had a chance, I was an adept. So it's like I should be sitting on the dais. But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna be Carrick's. And they thought that, they were like, holy shit, like that you're the first. I think I was the first one in definitely the first one in our temple's history to take a lesser role than their grade off. Like I could have just been sitting on, I was praemonstrator. I could have been sitting on my throne as the praemonstrator, but I wanted to be Carrick, so I was Carrick.
Actually, I think,
and I'm so glad. It was such a fun role. Oh my god.
Yeah, Carrick's is great. Carrick's is great. Although I've done Carrick's a few times, and I also, Carrick's is the same thing as the senior deacon in masonry, which I love that role. That's my favorite role. But I'm actually going to adjust that because Hieros was also really cool.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you did this.
I did that twice. Temple. I did Hieros twice. Yeah.
So in the OSS, not the Office of Secret Services, but the Order of the Sevenfold Star, we followed the Crowley's, the Book of the Law adjustments. So set, so the Hieros is set and the Hierophant is Rahorquit. So I got to invoke set, which was a great relief to our previous Hieros, who had to be in that role for years, because he was the only person who was
invoked set as Hieros.
Yeah,
that's insane. That's not smart.
It's awesome.
It's not smart. That for anyone listening, don't ever do that. Don't ever do that. We did one ceremony once where one adept took on the role of set, and he was so fucked for so long afterwards. Bringing
Well, so it's actually we had somebody leave because of that. He was like, "There's no way." Yeah.
So he's you were just saying like, oh, and he had so much fun. It was so great. Oh, and someone had left as a result of this.
Well,
dangerous invocation.
No, he left without ever seeing it in action. He left on principle, just the same way that you're,
Yeah.
And this was one of the Homsi people.
What was the justification for bringing the god Set into the role of the Hieros?
That's what it says you're supposed to do in the Book of the Law.
Book of the Law, right?
And
So you guys really were a fusion temple with
yeah,
some
yeah,
thelemic elements.
definitely some thelemic elements. We weren't, so our hierophant and founder uh, considers himself, well, I don't know if he still does, but considered himself a Thelemite. Um, and but did not, it was not explicitly a Thelemic order.
Right.
One of the things that was really interesting for me was when we were just getting started. So this was during the period he had done 3 initiations so far. I was the 4th, although one of those 3 had kind of dropped off. He'd done those 3 using the traditional Golden Dawn style, including the Golden Dawn God forms. And it was through, I don't know, whatever, he kind of got a sense that like, okay, I need to, Set really wants to talk to me, and so we're going to do this. So so this was before I had been voted on to be admitted, but I hadn't yet had my neophyte initiation. But they decided, what the hell? Let Alessandro join us for this. And so I was pretty much just as an observer, but he did an invocation of Set to basically like kind of have this conversation with Set, but he did it with us there, and find out what was going on. And it was a like very powerful, very memorable experience. I myself have never shied away from that, that sort of force. Kali and Shiva have always been kind of, I've always been pretty cool with them. And and Set is a really interesting god, and he's very angry, obviously. And he has, but if you look into his history, he's got some reason to be angry.
Well, yeah, he's been through many phases too.
Yeah,
There's probably more than one Set.
yeah. But when harnessed correctly, he is an incredible Iris, whatever you want to call it, because he will cut through all your bullshit. And
But I think Horus does that just fine without any of the evil.
Horus can do that too. Yeah, Horus definitely could do that too.
Like
I think,
if I was to tell Horus, I was like, you've done a good job, but I think from now on I'm gonna work with Set instead.
well, Horus gets a promotion because Horus gets to become the Hierophant, so he's happy.
Your Hierophant took on Horus instead of Osiris.
Yeah, and the Hegemon becomes Osiris.
Well, it was
Osiris.
definitely a thelemic temple, whether you like it or not, brother. Yeah,
no, it was. And it's one of those
I
things
can
where
see
I kind
why
of
some
like,
of our members didn't stick around when they
yeah.
found you. Yeah, that was just fine. It's its own thing. You turned out well, so amen.
It's funny, like I've come to realize that there are times where people would accuse me of being a Thelemite, and I took it as a compliment.
Sure.
And I've kind of come to, like, I still don't, I don't, because there's too many problems with Crowley, and I'm not a big fan of the Book of the Law, but there are certain aspects of that philosophy that I think are spot on. Like the whole idea of like magic being about finding your true will and then making that happen. Yeah, that sounds right to me. And the first step is finding your true will.
Yeah, I think about this quite a bit. I think we all do.
Mhm.
It's interesting. I think one of the tricks that I'm sure Thelemites talk about in their theology is some people I think can get distracted by the idea that your true will is a singular thing rather than
Right.
simply
That's something that I struggled with a lot.
the will of your true self.
Right.
And the will of your true self might be as varied and multifarious and have as many options as your regular will, and each path is equally true. I mean, most of us, you get to the top of the mountain eventually, no matter how many times you slip and fall off a few cliffs. But so that's something. It's like, it's not like you necessarily have this one thing and that's all there is. And that can, people I think, people can misread that Yeah, it's definitely open to misreading. Crowley loved to make himself open to misreading. That was his favorite thing in the world.
Yes. Yeah.
Definitely the approach that if you're too stupid to get exactly what I meant, then you deserve to be
Well, and one thing
read.
actually, I wonder if how you feel about this, because yeah, one of the things that really tripped me up also is that the way he presents it is like, okay, you're gonna go through the grades, and then you're gonna do the Abramelin operation or something like it, and you're gonna have knowledge and conversation with your holy guardian angel, and then your holy guardian angel is gonna just like guide you by the hand for the rest of your life.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like,
No,
I was like, wait, where's my, I thought I did the Abramelin operation, and I thought that I connected, and then I'm like, where's that hand holding? Like, I still don't know
yeah.
what I'm doing. What's going on here? I think I kind of feel like there was a bit of a bait and switch there. Like, that's not really how it works. And I've talked to others, but I don't know how what your experience has been like. But
My experience is when I'm doing my true will, and that I do have the benefits of having my higher self and the direction of my holy guardian angel on my side. When I'm not doing my true will, it tends to leave me alone. Like, I don't know what that fool's doing, but that's okay, I guess. But usually when I do operational work to communicate with my HGA, it's always to get direction onto how to improve my path, how to see it more clearly, and how I might make choices that make me more of my true self, that exalt my true self and spiritual nature rather than exalting my false self and lower nature. And that can be hard. I mean, everything I've been doing the last few years is definitely as much in line with my true will and the directions I'm being given as possible. And that's led to some thwarting of the desires of the lower self, and
Mhm.
that struggles. And there's a tension that arises, which is a healthy thing, I think, because that's the journey, that's the spiritual journey. That shows you where you have other magical workings that you can do. Um,
Mhm.
but yes, it also means you're not just doing what's best for yourself financially or emotionally or even physically, a lot of the time. um so yeah, it's something I wrestle with my angel, as we should all wrestle with our angels. um and it's our job to win, actually, not to
Mhm.
lose. It's our job, like Jacob when he became Israel, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
You're meant to wrestle and you're meant to win, which is,
Mhm.
to me, represents the descent of the divine genius into the seat
Mhm.
in Tiferet. To be That's
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
process of adepthood,
Mhm.
spiritually speaking, is to let that guidance and governance take up things in the soul. Otherwise, I wouldn't have the amount of energy I have
Mhm.
to do everything I'm doing, and I wouldn't wake up excited to do it every day. The reason I
Mhm.
wake up excited to do it every day and can barely take breaks to eat and other ablutions and exercise, right, is
Mhm.
because of that. Over My cup is overflowing, right? And
Mhm.
that's what you
Mhm.
want. You've got to fill your
Mhm.
cup till it overflows. If your
Mhm.
cup's not full, that's your first priority. But
Mhm.
when it's overflowing, that's this beauteous, beatific experience of living life in this flow state of knowing what you're meant to do and being,
Mhm.
despite whether no matter where you are in the world or in your life, you have this deep sense of satisfaction and fullness that
Mhm.
spills over, that you can then share with others because you're in line. You're in
Mhm.
line.
Mhm.
And so that's my experience of it, anyway.
Yeah.
And I did have my um, HGA show up once, very shockingly, and the presence in the room was my friend who I'd gone over to, whose house for Thanksgiving dinner, um, had left the apartment briefly, and my all of a sudden the room filled with this presence of terror, and I
Mm.
recognized it instantly, and it just said "leave." And I
Oh
threw
boy.
on my shoes and coat, and I ran out of the building, and I saw people with guns entering the front door and my friend letting them in.
Oh.
They were going to throw me off the
Oh.
balcony. Um, yeah,
Oh.
yeah. Well, they
Wow.
had stolen. They still to this day have stolen property, including ID and stuff at their houses, and they don't want to go to jail. So the only way for only way for 30, 40 people in this world to avoid jail is my death. And that remains to this day. I mean, that will follow me my whole life pretty much.
Thanks.
Because Canada doesn't give a shit. There's no protections here. Crazy, right? I mean, it's crazy. But what else can you do? I don't know. What else can you do, right? Do you have any thoughts
about that?
It's a tricky one, right? When people commit crimes and get caught committing them, and then have to cover their asses, so they I don't know.
Well, my general approach with that sort of thing is to try to just try to be like, lotus leaf, or just try to let it not try to not get attached or not cling. Although I'm not trying to, I can't give you advice on this, obviously. It's sort of you're in a different situation.
It's a good example of your true will not necessarily being something that's going to give you what you want. It's about something that might if I just stopped doing everything that I love and vanished, then these people would be very happy, and most people would probably say that's the wise move. But what's the point in living then? What's the point in living? Is it to live as long as you can in some degraded state of life, or is it to just live brightly and burn brightly and share your love and beauty with the world? And if there's dark people out there and dark forces that don't like that you're doing that, is the answer to succumb to them? No, of course not. And does this work out well for you always? No. Look at Jesus. It doesn't necessarily work out well. And one thing in the 5-6 initiation that you might recall is a few statements about the fact that if you take this path that far, you may be led into these sort of situations that might be part of your purpose on this earth. And if you're not up for it, they make it very clear prior to adepthood that if you're not up for that kind of thing, this is not for you. Yeah.
That is all true. However, I will say the best advice that I ever got when dealing with somebody who was a psychopath and who was somebody who made my life miserable was that the best revenge is to live a good life.
Exactly. Which is why you have me here today doing my podcast, not giving two fucks about the cunt fuckers out there that are greedy and lazy and just want to take what other people earn. They can suck it. Suck it. I'm having a great time. Yeah. Sorry, people. It's funny to be doing a podcast like this because those people are listening probably even closer than the average listener. It's weird to be a public person in any way. I've noticed this my whole life since I've been public a lot of my life, and it's crazy, like you're doing your work, you're going to release a course, and the people that don't like it are the ones who are going to pay the most attention to you for the rest of your life.
Yeah. I used to live with some anarchists, and they're I'm sure that it was the FBI paying more attention to them than any of their comrades.
Oh man, yeah, you can't win in this life. You can only celebrate it, really celebrate this reality and prepare for the next. I do think the next reality is more fantastic than we suspect. I have come sort of to that conclusion over the years. There was periods where I didn't think so, especially when I was doing certain kinds of work. But I don't know. What do you think? Have you explored much of the those deep astral realms and spirits and asked them questions like that, or experienced psychedelic realms and entities that communicate to you about any of that sort of stuff?
No, not quite like that. I mean, I guess my sort of thinking about that sort of thing is that everything that we identify with everything that we identify with ourselves, that we, our memories, our sense of identity, is all temporary, and that will fall apart
Yeah.
eventually. In some cases, like with my grandmother who has Alzheimer's, it's falling apart while she's still alive. Most of us, of course, it happens when we die. I just think that the ego is not that big of a deal. It feels like a really big deal, but I don't. I think that it's. I don't know. I think that when it comes to things like karma and reincarnation, the way that I understand that is that karma literally means action, right? And actions have consequences, and those consequences reverberate across lifetimes, and those action and the effects of those actions incarnate in individuals, and that is how karma reincarnates across lifetimes. But I don't think that the person who's sitting here talking to you is going to, anything that makes me is going to exist after I die. I was even, I was in preparation for this conversation, I was looking back over email exchanges I had with Nineveh just to kind of refresh my memory in case we started
Yeah.
talking about that.
Yeah. It's so cool that you spent some time in good
Well,
old
I never met him in
Nemo's
person.
order. Yeah.
Yeah, but I corresponded with him a lot over email for a period, and
I really
I
liked
was a
him. I really liked him. He's the reason I got into the GD. Like it was him. He fought for me, and a couple others down in LA who had good intuitions on me really fought for me. But
Mhm,
Nineveh was 16 when he was initiating the Golden Dawn and trained by the people who
mhm,
then later trained me. But he also he really trained our two main adepts.
mhm,
And they then trained me and built Temple
mhm,
Tahuti up along with the
mhm,
rest of us who,
mhm.
yeah. So he was a very cool magician. Um,
Yeah, he seems like he seemed like a really like a good guy. He didn't seem very like he knows his stuff, but he didn't strike me as like, I don't know. You tell me, but he didn't strike me as like terribly arrogant, the way that a lot of
no, he's a
people in
funny
this.
guy. He's a funny
Yeah,
guy. Yeah, all of us at Tahuti had a very, very healthy sense of humor.
that's
Um,
good.
yeah.
But I was a totally different person back then. Like I was looking back and I was like, wow, I was just. I was like the only reason why I have any, it was like like a different person was writing those emails 16 years ago, 17 years ago, whatever. Um, that just happens to have
Wow,
an email account that I have access to.
that's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. One thing I think sometimes, and I know some people will be interested to hear, like so I didn't want to come into this world. Like they had used forceps and everything. Like I did not want to come into it. And my mom had lost a pregnancy prior to my birth, and apparently I appeared to her in a dream prior to her giving birth, and like as a being of light, of course, saying, "Don't worry, everything's going to be fine." And I said other things apparently that when she does a little podcast with me one of these nights, we'll get some of that out if we can. And so that made her feel better, but it was a very difficult time when she drew my chart up after I was born. She just saw it and burst into tears. Apparently is the story she still sticks by. So that's what happened. And yeah, well,
And that's why I don't like astrology.
yeah, it's better to be surprised by those things. But having Mars and Mercury conjunct in the fourth house is never going to be an easy ride as a kid, and we had a very rough childhood. Um, but
Yeah.
the feeling that so through my early past life memories and workings like that I was drawn to as a child, um, the impressions I kept getting and the memories I kept getting were that I had focused most of the memories I could recall on spiritual development, and or love. Those were
Mhm.
the two memories I kept getting, were ones of where of like someone who dies as a romantic or someone who dies as a spiritual pursuer of mystical things. And then over the course of like when she was taking me to a bunch of psychics and other spiritual people, and I was again initiated at age 7, so into the yogic tradition, and had teachers. Then there a lot of we would go we'd go to a lot of traveling healers and teachers that would come through, and you'd go see them, all of that stuff, that full shebang in the early 90s. But the thing that was common across, because what's interesting is when 4 psychics over 5 years tell you the same thing, that's interesting. If they tell you the same one detail, doesn't, if those are the things that I always look for, where things line up. And the karma might have, I think, was that as much as I might be here to help to do spiritual work and help people spiritually, the things I have to learn are how to manifest that in this world through a kind of well, I hate the phrase social action is a tricky term these days, but like by seeing that light finally actually manifest into real forms. So one of the temptations I've struggled with, of course, being what I've gone through, is the temptation to use magic to, get revenge or hurt the people that wish me dead. And I think most magicians would, without a second thought. If people are actively want you dead, then you have the right to defend yourself. I don't have that freedom magically, given the vows I've taken, and given my belief as well. And I think there is something for me to learn this lifetime about finding, like, the judgment card. Like if there's a tarot card that represents a final incarnation, it's probably Shin. Probably that letter of the spirit of God, and that shows that some things need to be resolved on their own plane. And so in this incarnation, there's things I need to resolve on their own plane, and I do believe that some of those things are justice related. And seeing that, because sometimes you just have to have your day in court, quote unquote, right? And be heard and really make your point. And if you can't get heard, you might die on a cross, but so be it. It's still happening in the physical plane, that final Shin coming into Tav, and that equilibrium of the elements. And I think that might be that might be very much that kind of experience I'm having prior to not returning. As it happens, I don't actually really believe in reincarnation in that way, and I'm not really convinced my past life memories are memories of physical past lives. But that's neither here nor there, because the experience is still the same, of this reality in this moment in time. So there you go. There, I've that's something. That's a something. There, I need.
Well, one of the things that I think. And I thank you for bringing that back around, because I love that kind of ties back to what we were talking about earlier. But the one of the things I think is kind of interesting and problematic with a lot of people who go down this path is that they want to just leap right into the spiritual and go into these like sublime realms. And a lot of times it's a form of escapism, right? And kind of what you're talking about is not doing that, is not escaping, is not checking out, but is like, okay, there's work to be done here. And it doesn't, if you just do it all on this sort of like astral plane, the work needs to be done here. It needs to be, you have
to complete the process of manifestation, right? You've got the magic is aligning your yud with the active vav, so that you can take the superior hay and manifest it into the final hay, because they're both hays. They're the same thing anyway. The only thing standing in their way is the vav, which is, so many things. It's really just a yud drawing itself down into reality. I think about that a lot.
Yeah, it's funny how that the Tetragrammaton can be such a powerful symbol, source of inspiration and meditation.
It's almost like it has some inherent divinity somehow.
Almost like that.
I mean, I'm not joking when I say that. It's almost like it does. I don't know that it does, but it seems like it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, I wonder, one of the things that I think is kind of interesting well, I think one of the things that's kind of missing and maybe it's not missing, maybe it's just it's just not what I've been seeing, but it's just sort of, I find that a lot of the stuff that's in the Golden Dawn, one of the things I don't like about it is like this sort of this line. I think it's in the Theoricus initiation of, quit the material and seek the spiritual. Um, and like, and the people who anyone who advances to that grade probably doesn't need to be told to quit the material and seek the spiritual. They need to be told, more likely, is you need to deal with the material.
Do you think so? Or maybe that is the grade to truly just, I mean, I think part of the any elemental grades is to get lost in the element to some extent and learn how to navigate your way in it. I mean, we find this a lot. That's why tattva working is so powerful, because when you're in tattvas, like it feels like you're in that element, and the rules seem different according to that element. In subtle ways that can become vivid experiences in your active imagination.
Yes, no, that's true. I looked at it that way, as like, this is an appropriate teaching for this grade. Yes, I that makes a lot of sense to me.
But yeah, definitely, maybe if you're getting too lost in Theoricus in the air grade, you haven't done enough earth, or that part of it is experiencing imbalances, so that they are, I don't know. Yeah, I think that's definitely a part of it.
Yep. Yeah, that isn't, I mean, they're all interesting grades,
but yeah, people do tend to get lost in yours. Scott Stenwick believes that the elemental order of grades is wrong, and he reversed it and did experiments with water coming before air, I believe, or maybe before earth. I don't know.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I've talked, and I know that it violates the tetragrammaton formula, but I think
the tetragrammaton formula violates other formula as well. So like, sometimes we violate the directional formula of starting things in the east with the watchtower, which starts in the south because of Yud, right? So these formulas are meant to be interactive and dynamic.
That's right.
They're meant to serve our use. We're not meant to be cookie cutter molded onto them.
Right.
And that's that neurological cognitive way of probably ending up in thinking that yours is the only right way. If you've cookie cuttered yourself into someone's reality, then yeah, it reminds me of Saint John of the Cross in Dark Night of the Soul, where he warns that those then end up measuring God by themselves and not themselves by God. Their God becomes modeled after what they know, rather than they are modeled after God, which we never know.
And that's the problem with Ken Wilber. I don't know if you're very familiar with his.
I am. Now let's talk about my bald brother. I remember the first time I saw a picture of him as a kid, I'm like, if I ever lose my hair, I'm going to kill myself. It's so fast, because I had the most long, flowing, almost black hair down to my waist, and nature sure got me there, baby. Let's see. I'm joking, but it's a real thing. Like I mean, any guy will tell you the amount of girls that won't date you because if you don't have hair is crazy. I mean, girls might not realize this, but guys know this.
I think you wear it well. I think
I have a round head. I'm sort of lucky, but the point though. It's a real thing. Like, that's not a joke. There's like a huge percentage of women that will never even talk to a guy who's got no hair or is losing his hair. And I know this because they tell me this. They're like, not in regard to me. They always seem to make exceptions for me. Thank you, ladies.
You're the one that redeems all bald men.
Well, if you're in love with someone, you love someone, right? Let's be real. We're not talking about true love here. When someone says something like that, it's more Tinder criteria. Not that I would know. I really don't. Yeah. But Ken Wilber was fascinating me my whole life. I've only read snippets though. So
I mean, he's an interesting guy, and I think I read his magnum opus, Sex, Psychology, Spirituality, which really blew me away at the time. And there's definitely a lot good there. But what I later, his problem is that he comes up with this all quadrants, all levels model. It's like a unified theory of of all knowledge.
It's almost
And
like
the
he's
problem,
the 20th century version of Blavatsky,
maybe,
trying
I'm
to
not that
create.
familiar with Blavatsky,
Well,
but
Blavatsky believed her secret doctrine. Her whole thing was a
mm,
unified global religious system.
mm.
Was
Well,
making
he's trying to go
everything.
beyond religion. He's trying to do religion, science, humanities. He's trying to like get everything in there.
Yeah, yeah.
And the problem is that,
She did that
you
too,
know,
but they didn't have much distinction in the 1800s between humanities and science. I'm pretty sure rhetoric was still a science back then.
right, right, grammar. Uh,
Rhetoric and grammar
uh,
are not the same, but yes. Moving
no,
on.
I know,
We
but
don't need to
yeah,
talk about Aristotle. Enough with
I know that.
Aristotle.
Yes, I know they're totally different liberal sciences. Um, but
Science is the, and theology is the queen of the science.
um, but the problem with his model is that it tries to it's this cookie cutter. It's trying to reality is not doesn't conform to our models, and this is I think what Robert Anton Wilson was so clever about was that I don't know how much Robert Anton Wilson you've read.
Yeah, I've only read Prometheus Rising and this the what's it called?
Cosmic Trigger or the
No,
Illuminatus trilogy.
no. The Parsons thing?
Oh, Love and Rockets, but I think you just wrote the intro to that. I don't think you actually.
I've read Love and Rockets and Prometheus Rising.
Yeah,
So
Prometheus Rising is great.
I haven't read Prometheus Rising again since I read it in '94.
Right.
So I should probably read it as an adult, but
it'd be interesting to see if it holds up. Yeah.
I've been doing that with a few books actually. What was
Uh-huh.
the one I was just rereading? Well, Confessions. I read that when I was 14, 15, and I started rereading it in California again. Very different experience being close to the age he was when he wrote it versus a kid.
Right.
And the other one I was reading that you might find interesting. Damn, it'll come back to me. Sorry. Continue. I love that we're talking about Ken Wilber. He's something that we've never talked about on this podcast, and I'm sure a lot of people are curious.
Yeah. So I think, well, Ken Wilber and Wilson are kind of interesting to juxtapose because I think what Wilson observed, what was wrong with Wilber's whole thing was that Wilber was trying to come up with the one unified theory to explain everything. And the fact is that reality doesn't work that way. It's exactly what you were saying about St. John of the Cross. If you try to fit everything into a mold, you're going to be doing disservice to it. You're going to get it wrong. And this is what we know now from physics, from quantum physics, right? One model cannot possibly account for everything that at least currently, I mean, who knows in the future, but currently one model cannot account for everything that we experience. We need to have multiple models because our models, our ability to understand the universe is inadequate.
Yeah.
And Wilson understood this. And he has this great kind of very simple, very kind of, anyone can understand kind of analogy for this, and I'll kind of adapt it for my situation. So according to one set of governance, I live in Oakland, California. According to the post office, I live in Emeryville, California. Of course, according to another system, I live on Chochenyo Ohlone land. And so on and so forth. And the thing is that, but I just live in one place, right?
And we won't even ask John Greer's wife about where she thinks you should be. Because you asked too many questions. Sorry.
Too many questions. So the thing is that if you were trying to organize the whole world and every sort of geographic system based on what the U.S. Postal Service says the world is, that's not an adequate representation of reality. And that's the same problem with the Akwal system. Why did I say that? Okay, so that's going back to the Kabbalah and the Tetragrammaton and what you were saying about how rearranging, that you rearrange things for different purposes. It's just like when when you're doing a physics experiment, you're going to use a certain system. I remember when I was at the Santa Fe Institute, somebody pointed out, if you tried to, you would never have gotten to a rocket never would have landed on the moon if you tried to do it using the most modern complete form of physics. We had to use a simpler form of physics of just trigonometry, essentially, in order to do it.
Whoa.
It would have been too complex. It never would have worked. You actually have to use a simpler system. And that's, that goes back to the whole, I forget who said it, but all models are wrong, but some models are useful.
We're talking heuristics here.
Yeah.
Deep
Well,
heuristics. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I talk about, I try to explain that a lot to people in terms of Jacob's ladder, or the ladder metaphor in general. Like, how do you get to the top of the ladder? Well, you have to put your hand on this rung and your foot on this one at the bottom. Like, but doing that won't get me to the top. No, then you take the next one. So it's like doing this action doesn't achieve what you want to achieve, but it's the first action. It will get you to the next thing that can get you closer. But each one of them, as you ascend or climax, using the proper definition of the word climax, which means to gradually ascend, as opposed to the popular definition, which is to reach the apex of something. Interesting, different distinction, the proper and popular use of climax in the dictionary. So yeah, they as you ascend the ladder, the steps below no longer are true at all. They don't even hold heuristic value anymore. It's completely false when you're at the midway up the ladder that the lower rungs will in any way help you get up to where you're going. They won't. They won't help you at all. You pass them. They have no use to you. And
well, they might be useful if you need to reach something on a shelf that's at that level.
or their use, exactly. That's actually very insightful, because they are useful then if you want to go up and down, which is what the adept does.
Right. So yeah, we were talking about the switch. So what do you think of rearranging the elements, of doing water before air?
Well, I think that's a great experiment. Again, I'm a believer that the Golden Dawn system is good as it is and shouldn't be changed. But I'm also a believer that other systems are good too. Because we're always cycling through the elements, and just because you've gone through the cycle in the Golden Dawn, and then you've gone through the cycle again in Tiferet, and then maybe again in Gevurah and Hesed for the higher grades. Though of course, traditionally, as traditional as we can speak regarding those grades in 6.5, your work is to create an elemental system, right? And then go through it yourself and achieve the same thing by not only creating a system, but then going through it yourself. And one frater who achieved 7.4 in Yeshi's order, he did then create a Celtic Druidy sort of system, and to do that for his 6.5 work, and then put himself through it for his 7.4, part of his 7.4 work. I believe I'm getting that right. But
interesting.
Yeah, it's almost like that. It's almost like I'm supposed to create some sort of elemental grade structure as part of my 6.5 work. It's almost like that, isn't it?
That's really interesting. I'm knocking on the door of 6.5, so that's you're giving me a bit of a preview.
I wonder what kind of elemental order grade structure I might create.
Well, I like the letters OCM. I think that's a good place to start.
Yes, and I can't wait. I'm excited about the Order of Celtic Mysteries, because the initiations are going to be awesome. There'll be 2 versions of each of them. Like, so people will have the chance to go through the initiation straight, and then if they also want to go through it in a modified form entheogenically, that's something I think that would make Yates extremely happy. And this is something me and Chris Bennett talked about for a couple of years, about designing initiations for entheogens. But then I took it one step further, to then just say, well, this is working with what I'm doing, blah blah blah. And because Yates was a lover of hashish, he was a lover of peyote. Him and Maud Gon would take Peruvian torch and shack up in a hotel and shag their brains out, despite what people think. That's the letters make it quite clear. So to have in each of those, and again, this is a totally optional form of the initiation that has to be done in addition to, and under the a place where it's legal, under good blah blah blah, everything done extremely responsibly in this regard, with experienced people. But I think to me that's awesome, so you can have like hashish for one grade, mushrooms for another, peyote for another, uh,
Mhm.
ayahuasca for another, DMT, whatever. This is cutting edge shit, I think, in some ways. In some ways, not.
It's awesome though, because one of the things that, I've always wanted to, I mean, I've done a few psychedelics and really enjoyed them, but always in fairly uncontrolled circumstances. I mean, controlled, like I controlled the set and setting, but not, I didn't have like a ritual, to do. And, I always kind of wanted to do like the ayahuasca thing, but at the same time, it's like, I don't want to feel like a tourist because that's not my culture. That's not
Dude,
my tradition.
dude, just
Um,
just just set up a basic like scrying session,
mhm,
um, and do a watchtower or a full Enochian grade opening. Get the circumambulations going. That seems to be very important, actually.
mm,
The vortex, create the vortex in your
mm,
space,
mm,
and do that on just a little bit of mushrooms, and
mhm,
until you start to see the shapes in the air, and then watch how those
mm.
shapes react to the rituals and behave
Oh,
around your altar. It was last October when
cool.
I finally did my first full series of experiments, and it was like I did not expect the level of interactivity, and it took me from thinking there's a connection between the mushroom psilocybin realm and seeing it all of a sudden
Mhm,
take a radically different form, almost like it was
mhm.
just waiting for ritual to be done. It was just like, oh, and everything just opened up. I was like,
Nice.
this is intense. So I recommend something like that, you know.
Yeah, no,
Plus,
I
it
like
it
it. I might
never
do this.
hurts to be like, using your wand or your sword and tracing shapes and doing
And
invocations
seeing
and
it.
and see
Yeah,
the physical light shapes still
yeah.
there with your eyes open. You're like,
That's cool.
is this really? And
Well,
the next step for me is I can't wait to
there.
do those sort of experiments with other experienced magicians and see how much
Mm.
of we're all seeing in common. I'm
And one of the things I remember from a very early experience, I think my first experience with acid was how hallucinations were communicable.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that was
you know,
Yeats's main fascination, and it's one of my main fascinations that the
yeah,
boundaries of our minds are loose. That's why I keep that quote in my description, of my podcast, this long multi-paragraph thing from Yeats. I put it a lot of places because I want people to remember
mm,
where I'm coming from. This was what
mhm,
I read when I was 13 years old, 12 years old, reading Yeats for the first time and going, this makes sense. This as an
mhm,
underlying reality makes sense. If
mhm,
everything else I do in my life is to explore this problem,
mhm,
I'm fine with that. That I'm
mhm.
fine with. If all I can make is find a little bit of insight and make a little headway and propose some new ways for us to interact and think about these things in our Western mystery traditions, then what other great work could you achieve?
Yep,
Well, being nice
yep.
to people along the way and spreading love and laughter. That's probably a better thing than ritual technique with psilocybin. But hey, man, it's all good.
Well,
It's all gold.
yeah, to go together.
We deserve to have fun in this life, brother, don't we? We deserve to have fun.
Absolutely,
Oh my God,
absolutely.
people
What's
just
the
seem
point
so
otherwise?
so. People don't want to have fun anymore. They want to just like shake their fists and look for problems where there aren't any, and not
Oh
address the
yeah,
ones that are super obvious. Um,
outrage porn.
outrage porn.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, we're
yeah.
doing our best, aren't we? You've got a very cool sounding program that you're developing and stuff like that, and I think I'm very curious to see how it develops and how you market it. If I'm definitely open in what I'm creating to work with more people and bring other people involved into my setting, into my platform, and and
Yeah.
uh, and yeah, again, if especially if it does turn out to be that some of us don't really get to travel again, which some of us might never be allowed to travel again for the rest of our lives. That's a real possibility at this point.
Yeah.
So we may as well build these connections as best we can, with the tools we have.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. And
Yeah, I would love to get back into, doing initiations again and every once in a while, I think I might try to start an order, a little, like a little cottage order here.
Yeah, well, having temples is good. If you have a
Yeah.
temple that can, that's what I think people need to focus on building with people in their community. That's why it's such a shame that in a city there might be 20 Golden Dawn people, initiates, but divided amongst 5 or 7 different orders, and so they can't interact. Whereas if they could interact at all, they could build a initiatory temple very easily. Like Nineveh Shadrach did it. He got a 2-bedroom apartment. They made that place so gorgeous. It was off the charts, like inlays, embezzling, like just, it was a beautiful place, incense wafting out the door. You could just feel the magic when you walked into this shitty 2-bedroom apartment, which wasn't shitty. It was fabulous inside. You're like, holy fuck, you can do this? Yeah, you can. Just bring people together and have a great time, really. And you live in one room, and the other room's your temple, until you have enough members to pay $1,200 or $2,000 rent or whatever it is these days on a big commercial space. That boom, and that's all you need. It doesn't actually take that much. And if those people could get together and do those things, and again, if you focus on the work, you don't have too much time for human drama, really. I don't think you need to be like John King, who doesn't allow women or homosexuals into his group.
Oh my God.
Well, his reason, actually, for everyone curious, because I know I posted a bit on Instagram about that, is to avoid drama. That's his only stated reason.
Oh.
But
well, yeah, I remember it. It's still, yeah, it's nonsense, but it does remind me of something that I heard about, why Masonry doesn't allow politics, religion, or women in the lodge. It's because those are the 3 things that tend to drive men apart.
Yeah.
It's,
I think,
it's not.
I think there's a better way to avoid drama than that. Like Frater Yeshi has a good rule in theirs, where you can't invite your friends and family members to join the group. And honestly, that might have saved Temple Tahuti back in my day. If my friends and family hadn't been allowed to join, if other people's friends and families hadn't been allowed to join, if they had to just go find their own thing, like, because that's when you get these sort of these clubs, these people, they gang together with their crew, and they can want more power or
but how
control.
but how do you grow? I guess you have to have a referral.
You find people who are actually interested in what you're doing, not joining because they're friends in it.
Friends are, yeah, that's true. That makes sense.
Right. And does that mean, yes, that you have fewer people? Does that cut off a major access point? Yes, but it means the only people who find you are people who are really looking for what you're doing.
Right.
Not because they just want to hang out more with their friends, or stage a power grab, which is what eventually happened at Yeshi's, just like it happened at Tahuti, with the same person. Actually, it was the same person who caused the power grab at Tahuti that caused the fall of it. That same person 10 years later joined Yeshi's order. Yeshi had forgotten my warning, and he then tried the same thing there over 8 years. And then Yeshi had to come to me and be like, what's up with this dude? I'm like, the dude I told you to avoid at all costs. He's like, yeah. He said, I have no greater regret than forgetting that bit of thing. And that guy's probably listening. So hey, if you're listening, Daniel, go fuck yourself. That's a message to our favorite listener. I'm joking, not at all. What can I say? It's good to see a friend, brother. I'm a little loose. I'm a little loose of tongue today.
Yeah, I know. I understand. Damn, what was I gonna say? Felt very important at the time. Oh, I remember. Do you know Fromy?
Fromy.
Michael, he was a member of Hamsi around the time. I know him because he was part of that whole exodus. Yeah. And he was actually the person who introduced me to Nineveh.
No, we closed in 2004. 2003, 2004. So that was a decade later, I think.
Yeah, that was a whole decade. Wait, no. That was around that time. That was that.
Oh, yeah? Really?
Yeah.
What was his name?
Michael Fromowitz.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Where was he based?
Boston.
Yeah, he's yeah, it was, yeah, yeah, anyway.
Anyway,
I'm
so
still close with the Austin people for the most part.
yeah, I don't, yeah, so he was with the Boston crew. He ended up doing kind of actually, so a sort of Judaic thing, which is kind of interesting. But he made an interesting observation, speaking of temples, that the Oddfellows, so the problem with masonry is that masons are very jealous of their temples, right? It's very hard to get access to them. Oddfellows are much more open-minded about that sort of thing. So so he became an Oddfellow, is like actually pretty involved in that. But it
Went to
also
the
means that he,
Oddfellow when I was living near you. I went to the Oddfellows Hall in Geyserville a few times.
uh-huh,
Yeah,
uh-huh.
I almost joined.
Yeah, they're an interesting group. I joined, but I'm not active. I mean, it was just, but they've got, lodge rooms,
Yeah,
and that are mostly just sitting there collecting dust.
yeah,
And a lot of them are beautiful. Um, and they're designed for initiations. I
yeah.
mean, so to your listeners who are looking for real estate for doing initiations, Oddfellows might
Join the
be an option.
Oddfellows. They would have
Yeah,
no problem letting you use the space for your own thing.
yeah, that's what Michael said. Now, I hope that he doesn't get in trouble for. Although I yeah, for what I just
No,
said.
no, I think the Oddfellows will. Yeah, yeah, and they need more. They're a cool crew that could use more members as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
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 but yeah, a lot of GD groups use rent out Masonic lodges, of course.
yeah. And I mean that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, and the history is all there, and the pillars are in the wrong place. But besides that, it works.
Yeah. So back to the Ken Wilber. Is
Hmm.
it Ken Wilber? Yeah. So you were saying something. I'm not quite sure I fully understand you're saying something about his structure causing
Yeah.
problems for understanding.
So yeah, so he has this whole thing about these holarchies. Holarchies are sort of this. It's an interesting notion that it's somewhere it's not exactly a hierarchy, because a hierarchy uh, implies separation between levels, and in a holarchy, each level transcends and includes its what it's made out of. So, an example of that would be a cell is made up of its component parts. A multicellular organism is made up of its cells. Each level in that is is a holarchy. So organism is a level of the holarchy, cell is a level of the holarchy, but you can't have an organism without the cells. The organism depends on the cells, and everything that's true about the cells continues to be true about the organism, but the new things come in as well, right? So there's new, so you have emergence comes up in this sort of holarchy system. Um, and it's a good system in a lot of ways. It's a good way of understanding how I think how hierarchy can work in a way that is not oppressive or abusive. Although it doesn't quite work, because of course in a human hierarchy, the master of a lodge, or is not made up of the members. The lodge is made up of the members. So
Yeah.
it's a different kind of and that's kind of where things start to break down, is like that taking this notion of a hierarchy and trying to apply it to everything ends up getting you into some kind of weird um, paradoxes. So, for example, yeah, even with the biological example, there's sort of this question of, okay, which way is well, let's see. No, that's actually not a good example. But like when a lot of the things that come up with human relations, that it doesn't work. It's like you want it to work because you want to have this sort of like nice unified theory, but of course humans are more complex than that, and it doesn't quite work.
So that's what it comes back to, is the uncontrollable dynamism of the human spirit.
Yep. Or nature itself, for that matter. I
Yeah,
mean, the duck-billed platypus, right? Is it
Yeah,
a mammal, or is it a bird? Or is it a, you know?
I think it was. I watched Michael Malice debate that leading Ayn Randian objectivist for 3-4 hours on Lex Fridman's podcast. And one of the interesting things Malice, I think, pointed out was the struggle with us trying to impose order on reality is that our concept of order comes from reality. What we think is order is really just reality. And so the idea that we have, there's some order that it could become when we have such a flawed understanding of what order is in the first place, that the entire exercise might be futile. I think that's what he was saying, which is
Yeah,
why he's an anarchist, of course, and believes that we should have competing values and interests that serve us, and then that are then forcibly negotiated with each other when they conflict, rather than giving rights to someone or something to just impose rules, whether you like it or not.
I think that's exactly right. I think that that's how any functioning. That's why democracy is more powerful than totalitarianism or social or communism. Is that you have to have, a the we have the most a diverse system is more robust, right? You have because then you have things that can account for edge cases that you couldn't anticipate otherwise. If we just have a perfectly Ayn Randian free market economy, things are going to go to hell. You're going to have the same problem, and you have the same problem with the Soviet Union, with this sort of socialist top-down kind of thing. We need a mixture, and I think that's true. I think that's true on all levels. And I think that's true. I think that's part of why going back to the Kabbalah, it comes up there. I think it comes up. I think it comes up everywhere. Is that reality is more nuanced. Although the thing that there's a paper called something like, I can never get the title of it right, but it's something like the uncanny effectiveness in mathematics in the physical sciences. And this is like the counterpoint that I always keep in mind, because one of the things that's so weird about physics is that math works to predict phenomena better than anyone should reasonably expect it to, given that math is something that the human brain made up, right? And, calculus wasn't we didn't find calculus in the universe.
Yeah, is it
Although
true
I guess
that
arguably,
is it true that the biggest problem with math is that it's incomplete?
well, that's So this goes back to Gödel's incompleteness theorem, and the Gödel's incompleteness theorem basically says that any mathematical system that is, say, big enough to be interesting is necessarily incomplete and probably contradictory.
Okay. Yeah.
And the proof of it is really complicated. But that's the basic idea, is that it's literally logically impossible to create a complete mathematical system of anything.
It's interesting how math is limited in that sense, but in its limitation plays out the same service that every other limited structure we use to get through life has inherently, right? Like all of these structures are incomplete. Everything
Yeah.
about this might be part of the mysteries of reality, the incompleteness, the unfinishedness. I mean, again, even St. Paul talks about that, and this idea that it's studied actually quite a bit in the last 100 years in something called process theology, which was started by Paul Tillich.
Yes.
A lot of people
Yes.
don't read Paul Tillich anymore, but they should read Paul Tillich anymore. A lot of theologians discounted him after he died because it was discovered that he had naked pictures of women. I know the idea that a human male would in their possession have access to any naked pictures of women is, of course, heresy and perversion
Yeah.
at its extreme, because no good human being would ever do that, and therefore you should discount anything that person, whoever has ever says. Oh, yes, it's crazy to discount that's the true ad hominem fallacy at work.
Yeah.
Have you
Yeah.
noticed that people are actually radically misusing the ad hominem fallacy online?
How do you mean? Like they just do it?
So I've heard all these people explaining it. We need a term like mansplaining, but when it's being done by a stupid person, like dumbsplaining it,
Okay.
saying either
Okay.
the prevailing, the ever increasing notion of that fallacy, which is an important logical fallacy for
Mhm.
our minds to understand. It really
Mhm.
is.
Right.
The prevailing popular understanding of the ad hominem fallacy is that it occurs when you say something, and rather than address what you said, I attack you personally.
Okay.
That's not true. The ad
No,
hominem
that's an ad hominem
fallacy,
attack.
it's
That's
yeah, but that has nothing to do with the ad hominem
it's
fallacy,
not a
which is a
right.
logical fallacy. And it's the
Right.
logical fallacy of discounting the value or the logic of the statement
Mhm.
because of who the person is.
Right. Right.
So it's like, that's insane. Yeah, something, a person can say something that's true. It doesn't, it's not untrue just because they're a dick.
Right. Right.
They're a dick just because they're a dick.
Right. 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 Although,
Anyway,
yeah.
I know most people,
Yeah.
some people might actually out there hear that distinction and be like, well, whatever, it sounds like the same thing, but it's really not the same thing.
No, it's those are two different. I mean, one, yeah, those are two different things. Um, and yet, I have this debate with my wife all the time about like to what extent can you separate the art from the artist? And
That's an
when
interesting one.
some and yeah, I mean it's when somebody yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Yeah, well, if we get into the art and the artist thing, yeah, we get into cancellation grounds hardcore, right?
Yeah,
Because
that's a
what do you think about that Kevin Spacey coming back to play a character who's wrongly accused of sexual
oh
assault or something
no,
like that? He's coming back.
really?
Yeah, they're casting him as a character who's wrongly accused of either
Ooh.
sexual assault or some sort of thing like that, which is pretty funny. What not as funny is the fact that like all but one of his male accusers have died under mysterious circumstances since
Whoa.
in the last couple of years. He just vanished. It feels like someone who's part of whatever fucking cabal they're in. I don't know. Someone told him, okay, lay low, do a weird
Yeah,
ass
right.
video where you acting like your character, lay low, we'll take care of it. In a few years, we'll plan your comeback. We got a perfect plan. Don't worry,
Wow.
we've done this before. Um,
That
and and
does it
that and
does feel very
I'm saying that not knowing if he's actually
yeah.
guilty of any crime, though. If 7 people accuse you of a crime and 6 of them suddenly die, I don't know the numbers. I don't know the details on this, and I'm not,
There's something very
and I like Kevin Spacey's acting. Like, who doesn't like his acting? I mean, oh my
right.
God, what an actor.
Yeah.
But, and though I have not actually, I watched that Woody Allen documentary recently, and I
Hmm.
wish I hadn't, because I haven't been able to watch one of his movies since. And I might
Yeah.
do what some other people do, which is watch them after he's died and he's not making money from that anymore.
Right.
But it was rough. It was rough,
Yeah.
That's some, I don't know. Yeah, see
Yeah.
what I'm saying when we start talking about the artist and the art. But yeah,
Yeah.
I frequently cover material on this podcast that is written 100 years ago. Like I've been doing Franz Hartmann, who was one of the founders of the OTO, the real OTO,
Mhm.
not Crowley's OTO. And
Okay.
he was a medical doctor, and he, at the end of his life, he wrote this book I've been covering chapter by chapter, um, which is a great book called Magic, White, and Black. One of my favorite books when I was 16. But even when I was 16 in the 90s reading it, I was aware of the things that weren't true anymore. Like when he talks about phrenology as being one of these adventurous new science breakthroughs in
Right.
science, I'm like,
Right.
yeah, I know that's wrong. When he talks about, when he starts getting into stuff about different races coming
Hmm.
with these things, it's like, yeah, that they had these ideas, they
Hmm.
played themselves out, they were
Right.
wrong. I'm
Right.
not going to ignore the other things he says just because he had some wrong ideas. probably most of our ideas are wrong. Like
Right.
I think our future generations are going to look back at every single one of us who's alive today as being just horrible. Like,
Oh yeah.
or they might look at, I don't know, but like, they'd be like, you mean, are you talking about that era of humanity where they survived, where they dealt with Hitler, and then they created new extermination camps in China, and the whole
Right.
world was like, never forget, and now they're like,
Yeah.
sorry, yeah, it's a different culture, they have different practices, this is normal for them. Yeah, that's what Biden said, right? He's like, this is normal
Right.
for their culture to genocide an entire people, so we
Oh
got to
my gosh.
support them in their cultural differences. Like, I don't think that's going to play well in the future.
No.
And the fact that we're not all up in arms about that and about a bunch of other things, I don't think it's going to play well for us. So I think all of us today will be lucky if one thing we ever said or did gets
Yeah.
regarded as like, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. I think they're absolutely right that you have to read critically, but you don't necessarily throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
The troubling thing is that there are people still today who believe in that kind of bogus race theory, and
Oh yeah.
that's the scary thing. But
We have yet found a solution to stupidity.
yeah,
I don't know. I also convenience. It's convenient for some people to think that way and stuff. Like,
of course,
yeah.
right?
Don't you have
Yeah.
like a politician or a mayor who won't let white reporters interview them if they're straight and male? Don't you have something like that going on?
I don't know about that,
I
but
hear, yeah, and they're getting
there's an
sued.
interesting.
I heard a Canadian lawyer that I like, that I follow, because I like listening to these I like logical thinking. Covered it. That's why I know about it. A Canadian lawyer covered it. And yeah, they're being sued, of course, because like he's yeah, no white journalists are allowed to talk to me.
Yeah,
Great.
that's just that's not reminds me of the I don't know, my favorite oh boy, I'm blanking on her name now, but she was a famous anarchist who said the opposite of patriarchy is not matriarchy, it's fraternity.
Hmm.
Which I thought was a really, the way I interpret that is that you don't you don't solve the systems of oppression by just replacing who's in charge.
Right. Right. Which is what's weird about this new wave of feminism. Because I was raised as a feminist, even critically in university, and I was
Mhm,
taught actually critical theory. Nothing like
mhm,
what people think it is today, because
mhm,
there's more than one way to read Foucault and Derrida, believe it or not, people. Those folks wrote a lot of things. And if you just take one idea and twist it, doesn't mean that you understand it. Um, but I was raised in this culture of feminism,
mhm.
and it was no
Germaine
problem
Greer,
for
I think it
me,
was. Yeah.
because feminism in my lifetime and before my lifetime meant egalitarianism. It was literally a
Mhm.
synonym. But now
Right.
I watched the thing on Netflix that Netflix produced, and they come out and literally say feminism is the best way for us to be, and it's defined by women being recognized as superior to men. Then they did a little test, and
Mhm,
it took like 2 minutes on Netflix in this documentary
mhm,
series they did. And they did a
mhm.
test, and they're like, see, this, it had to do with organizational skills. They're like, see, definitive proof that men are inferior to women in every way. And then they moved on without addressing. I'm like, holy shit, holy
Yeah.
shit, holy
You just did a
shit.
search and replace, and that's yeah.
They're like triumphing sexism in a way that might infect us for generations to come, because this is how kids are being raised.
Nuance is difficult, folks.
Well,
It's a lot
I
easier
think,
just to do a search and replace than to actually rewrite the argument.
what happened to
Um,
humanitarianism? I don't know, but
I don't.
I think making noise like this and letting other people know who are wondering the same stuff is a virtuous thing to do. I think
Mm.
that's something I think what we're doing is a healthy thing to do. This kind of podcasting, like 3 hours now almost,
Oh
and
my gosh.
yeah, time flies. Time flies. But I think if even if maybe it's for posterity, or maybe it's for people right now just thinking like, hey, we need to like have these discussions and open debates and conversations, and people need to see it. and realize, oh, we're just people, you know, and we're working stuff out. We're not going to bleed. We're not right about everything we say, and we're in the process of growing, and we got to be allowed also freedom to say stupid things that
Yeah.
we don't necessarily know are true.
Right.
Important to be wrong, right? Science.
Yeah.
Science promotes that more than anything. The importance of being open to being wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been listening a lot to the Conspirituality podcast, and
Oh, tell me
there's
about
a
that.
it's great. It's really and there was an episode called "Cis White Man," which I think you'll enjoy, which talks about the ad hominem, fallacy, and but the what was I
Dude,
thinking
if
about
someone
just
ever
now?
called me, cis to my face, I would fucking hit them so hard.
Well, the cancel culture thing is a really big problem too, and it's like at one point he says like,
Excuse me, I
oh,
have to end the interview now and cancel you because it is not a problem. It is wonderful
well,
when it cancels who I don't like.
yeah, yeah, who has this authority, first of all, and then if everybody, like, it was something that was like, he was talking about, should John Muir be canceled? And because John Muir at one point said some pretty racist things about Native Americans, and that's good.
The
And
Apothic Dark was on sale for the
what is that?
first
Is that
time.
a
Apothic Dark,
whiskey?
Apothic
What is it?
Dark wine.
Wine. It's a beautiful. I love the. Yeah, that's a great label and title. And yeah, they also have an Apothic Light and Apothic Red, or it's just
They have the regular Apothic, which is a red, and then they have
okay.
Apothic Inferno, which is too much for me. I think that's a whiskey soaked one maybe. And then
Ooh,
they have a spring summery one that only comes out
okay.
sometimes called Apothic Crush, and that's my favorite. Though I can
Mm.
only drink this sometimes because it's a very strong, bold wine.
As you would
And
expect from a.
yeah, and we had it last night, and I saved a little bit for today because I knew that I'd be seeing you, and I was so excited to have a little fraternal hangout with a brother who's not only a Mason, but
Yeah.
a GD and Druid,
GD-ish.
and who's excited about the Celtic mysteries. I'm very excited.
Yeah,
I was looking forward to our talk very, very much. So
me
pardon me
too.
celebrating in the early afternoon with a little beautiful Apothic Dark. Shout out to our future sponsors. If anyone works there, please
Yes.
sponsor this podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Some people don't realize this who listen, and that I think there was a Rufus Ope. The first time I talked to Rufus Opes, they're like, you were there. There was a comment on YouTube or something like that. Frater RC was too drunk for this one. I was like, actually, it was like 3 a.m, 2 a.m. I had just done a 3-hour interview with one of the Austin Fraters, Jeff Contreras,
Oh,
and
wow.
drunk half a bottle of scotch. I wasn't drunk for that interview, the first one with Rufus Opus. I was like blacked out. I contacted him while blacked out, and
Wow.
and it was perfect because I saw he was on Facebook. I'm like, yo, blah blah blah, Harper Feist, you can see her in the background of the video, which is online. She got me out of a bedroom, going into a bathroom, where being, what are you doing up? He's like, I'm like, oh, how's Harper? How's she's like, we broke up. I'm leaving. I'm moving out, and he's just there on the computer. So
Wow.
yeah, it was, But so
Yeah.
here's my point. My point to people who don't understand this podcast. This was started in lockdown, and I haven't been allowed to do that much, and so I've been enjoying people's company. And this is my celebration time when I do interviews. It's like sometimes it's not, sometimes it's hardcore, but sometimes it's just,
Cool.
this is my human interaction. This is my celebration. This is my party time, and I'm trying to bring that to other people who are locked down and not allowed to see their friends and family and stuff like that, because that's a lot of people still. Whether not everyone realizes that as things are opening up, for some people things are getting worse than ever now. For some people, the rent's coming due, so to speak, or literally,
Right.
and there's other problems going on. Like I could tell, like, there's a list of things that we should be aware of that some people are going through. And I don't try to think too badly of my situation at any point, even at the worst situation, because I worked enough with the down and out while I was in seminary to see true horrors. So
Yeah.
there's people
Yeah.
who are in situations that are so bad you don't even want to look at it. I invite you to
Yeah.
maybe look at it, and if there's
Yeah.
something you can do it, because
Yeah.
it's there's people that they were in hell before this started, and now it's even worse.
Yeah.
And I think that that's so important. I don't know how to express how important I think that is, that we not just acknowledge it, but try and do something about it. Like, fucking do
Yeah.
something about it. Like,
Yeah.
we do, me and my family definitely doing our part. We can't do much, but we put out like food bags. We make sure we separate the bottles and cans into ways that they can
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and put
Pick
those
up
out.
and
And yeah, and put food and like meals, like fruit and
yeah.
muffins or whatever we cook, we bake things and put them out just for those people, because there's a ton of them in Vancouver. We have the whole of
Mhm.
Canada's homeless basically in Vancouver,
Oh, sure.
because
Right.
the rest is too cold. You can't.
It's the nicest place.
It's
Yeah.
no, it's
The
because
most
it's the only
comfortable.
place you can survive
I
outside
know.
in winter.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's like
Anyway,
why Santa Barbara has such a huge homeless population.
mm,
It's you know
yeah,
it's a comfort if you're going to be homeless. Yeah.
yeah. When I
I need to pause for a second, but
okay, and we're
okay.
and we're
I do
back.
need to,
We're
and we're
back.
back. And I do need to go soon, but I want to
Yeah.
share this thought because we were just talking about the problem with the corruption in government, and you said, do we just need people with integrity going into these role, going into government and holding
And
onto their
not.
integrity? And I'm
Yeah.
skeptical about whether or not that would really work because of the Stanford Prison Experiment,
Right.
because of how the way that Zimbardo puts it, the problem isn't bad apples, the problem is a bad barrel. That
Mm.
when you are, there's no human on earth who has the level of integrity, the level of willpower would be necessary to stand up to an army of lobbyists that are harassing you day in and day out. And if you don't appease them, you won't get money, so you won't get reelected. So you play this game where you're like, okay, I'm going to try to make this work so that I can get
Yeah.
reelected, so that I can do what I came here to do. But it's a slippery slope thing. Next thing you know, you're just taking marching orders from the biggest corporations on earth, and
Yeah.
you go in there with good intentions. I think most politicians get into politics because they want to do good,
Yeah.
and then but by the time that they're in a position of power, they've,
Next thing they know, they're at Epstein's apartment in New York.
I mean, yeah, it's just you know kind of. I mean, I know
Yeah.
you're being
Yeah.
facetious, but
Yeah.
I'm kind of, yeah.
No, I know. It's like we laugh, but then we're like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, a little bit, a little bit.
Yeah. Just,
That's sort of true. Yeah, no, so yeah, the issue of a bad barrel. My first thought was, well, the Stanford students playing the guards weren't necessarily checked out to be good people, because they were pretty much kids who had never probably had their integrity tested in their lives. Like
that's
when
true.
Temple Tahuti left Homsey because of
Mhm.
what Zinc was doing, that was an integrity move.
Mm.
Did it violate agreements, some oaths or promises? Maybe. But if you're violating the core principles of what we're about, which is, and now you're extorting people for money, sexually mistreating people, and doing black magic explicitly in a Golden Dawn temple, and ordering it to be done, I would say you've
Yeah.
breached the agreement.
Yeah.
And if the international group doesn't want to expel that corrupt leader,
Mhm.
then it's falls upon us to stand by our own conscience. And one thing that's nice about the Golden Dawn is it does emphasize the importance of your own conscience. And that is the key. And that's a very good thing that's in there. Sort of like your First Amendment. It's like having that is key. We respect other people's religions. We respect everyone's religions, or at least we don't let it be a problem as best we can. I mean, that's tough, right? Because if someone wants to join whose religion believes that uh, gay people should be stoned to death, that will be a problem. We're not trying to disrespect your religion, but we don't really have a choice because you
Well,
believe.
there's this interesting, right? Like the how, the interplay between, hate speech and, freedom of speech. Like how do you navigate that? And that's a really tricky problem.
Uh,
Um,
I don't believe in hate speech. Like,
well, that's easy
not
for you to
really as a
say.
crime. Mm, I
Well, the
how
problem is that
I've
Nazi
been I've been
propaganda
I've been
isn't.
on the ground surrounded by
Mhm.
guys kicking me, trying to kill me while calling me the F word. I guess I don't want to say the actual F word, but you know what F word I mean. It's not fuck. Um,
Right.
and that makes that the speech made the crime a hate crime, even though I'm not gay. But this is
Right.
just something that people do
That happened.
because
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
say every bad word they want when they're kicking someone. And this
Right.
happens to men all the time up and down the street I've lived on for many years,
Sure.
Davie Street, which is the gay area. And if
Yeah.
you're like me, we all go. Most cool people go to gay clubs because that's where the fun dancing is. Um,
Sure.
if you get shit kicked on your way out some night on the way home, well, that's just how the cookie crumbles, and it's a sad part
Mhm.
of reality. But
Mhm.
the speech itself is not a crime, right? So
The speech itself is not a crime. I don't know. I at the same like I yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about it because it's on the one hand, we shouldn't be, I obviously we don't be policed for thought crimes and things like that. On the other hand, the way that the Proud Boys recruit is, you know, through language, and language is powerful. And as we
yeah,
know, as magicians, you know,
yeah.
um,
Yeah, I don't know anything about them. I probably should, but I also don't really care.
yeah, no, it's not, I mean,
But I don't want to interrupt what you're saying. I'm just
yeah,
so aren't they're confusing though, because the only thing I know about them is that they were founded and led by a black man, and they're supposed to be white supremacists. So their leader
I've
is a
never heard of
black.
that, that they're,
Yeah, he's
that,
their founder and leader is a black guy, and this is what we know in Canada at least, or what like this is
I
true.
never heard.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and so I've seen people confused up here. Like, how
Well,
can they
I
be a
that
white supremacist group under those circumstances?
I had never heard that, and I will look that up. That does
Yeah,
sound
I don't know.
strange.
You're in California, so
Maybe
who knows
they're
what
maybe
wacky
they're a bad
information you
example.
guys are
Yeah,
getting. It
yeah.
really is scary
Al-
though, this
Although,
segmentation of information of who gets given what information, right? So you're giving this group this, they're giving us the information they want to get us to behave a certain way, and that's the real hate.
that's yeah, yeah.
It's
No,
like
I agree with you. Right, because that's actually a much bigger problem. It's not the problem isn't censorship. The problem is or lack of censorship even. The problem is this sort of siloing segmentation of knowledge, right? Yeah, I think you're right. I think that
well,
that's actually a much bigger problem. Like if
yeah,
because there've always
well,
been racists,
a great
right?
yeah, yeah, racism, as one of my as the my professor of church history had said in first year seminary, don't worry, racism's alive and well, and it will be forever. He's like,
Right.
trust me, Martin Luther
Yeah.
founded my faith, but he was a racist.
Yeah.
you know, he would talk about the devils he could see standing on the housetops of the people who he knew that were Jewish, and that's how you could tell they were Jewish, because the devils were standing on.
Oh my
Martin Luther
gosh.
said this, right? Yeah, he said this, man.
Yeah.
Did he bring about a lot of healthy church reform? Absolutely. Did he promote literacy? In a first guy probably since Charlemagne to promote literacy amongst the populace. That's a good thing. Um, but I don't remember. Okay, anyway,
Anyway.
anyway.
Okay. Maybe is this a good point to try to wrap up? I don't know.
Yeah, though I feel like we were touching on something that I did want to
We were.
hammer into the plank. That maybe you were touching on.
I was talking about bad. We were talking. I think you wanted to say something more about a bad barrel,
The
maybe.
bad barrel. Yeah, this is an interesting like, is it, see, I guess
Are you
my,
talking?
yeah, so there was the idea that maybe some of these guard students had never been tested, hadn't their
Right.
integrity tested. I mean,
Right.
like, if it was between deciding on them trusting their integrity and say a seasoned war veteran, which
Mhm.
could just as easily be a shitty person.
Right.
However, they have been tested more, right? Like,
Yeah.
like when I had the chance to consolidate power and influence and everything that a magician, young 23-year-old magician could have dreamed of at Temple Tahuti, I didn't do it, even though and the damage to my life and my family's life was insurmountable because I stuck by principles along with a few others, and that's a test. And it's Franz Hartmann talks about this actually in the recent interview I did on illusion, or the podcast on illusion. You should check out that chapter actually on illusion, because he talks about, I believe it's the one on illusion, where he talks about the irrelevance of the form of things, especially the form of a human being, although he uses the word man all the time, which I tried to change it at first because it bugs me. It just bugs me because but then I was like, fuck it. That was the time period. Man was humanity, whatever. And he was a German writer too, so he didn't have this problem. He would just say mensch.
Man just means
Mensch.
human, yeah.
Mensch means human. Man means man. Still means man, but Mensch is the word for human in German.
Oh, okay.
Oh Mensch, gib acht, was spricht die tiefe Mitternacht? Or the famous I teach you the Superman is ich lehre euch den Übermenschen, the overhuman, the higher human.
Oh, right.
And the word there is Menschen, die Übermenschen. Der Mensch ist etwas, das überwunden werden soll. You know, the man is something that the human is something that should be overcome. What have you done to overcome your being human? And that led to many bad ideas, of course, but the best interpretation of it was still nascent in our spiritual traditions, which is the idea of the higher self, the ideal self, a better self, a more kind and loving self. What's the guiding rule of that higher self? Love God and love your neighbor as yourself. That is absolutely the only bedrock we keep coming back to. And if you stray from that bedrock, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Right. You're not loving, you know, and that's one of the biggest struggles in my life is I do a lot of work on loving my enemies, like a lot. That's a huge part of my alchemy, you could say. And I think it will be for anyone who progresses a certain distance along the path, is to try and learn to love your enemies. Whereas another professor, the dean of my seminary, said once, the problem with Christianity isn't that it's not that we disagree, that we all love Christ, God, or that we should all love God, Christ, and our neighbors. How do they say it? She said it so well, this priest. We did, you know, the problem isn't that we disagree that we should love God, but how we should love God. Right. So the question is the methodology. It's why in everything I do, I focus on methodology, because I think that's the most important thing. I've even run my methodology of teaching by some very secret and prominent adepti in secret and obscure rarefied realms of the GD world, and run by them my methodology to say, what do you think of this? Because this is something I'd like to know your thoughts on. And they've said, wow, that's really great, because the methodology is sometimes more important than the content. How you teach people to learn and develop and practice and grow in ways that facilitates them for the future, like teaching a man to fish rather than just giving them the fish. You know, here, download all these fish anytime you want, wherever you want, for free. Not that helpful. Information versus knowledge, but yeah.
Yep. Definitely agree with you there. Yeah, methodology is really important. And it's, you know, it's why, I mean, we have a world where we have all the information that we want at our fingertips, and yet we still can't figure things out. And I think it's because of what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's internalizing it. It's knowing how to,
Hartman actually talks about that too. He says, we got all this technology making the basic things of life easier, but he's like, but somehow we're finding ways to still make things worse. And he actually talks about this in 1886. So that's why I read him. That's why I record him for people, because like, that's amazing. Like, sure, he's a medical doctor in 86, in the 1800s, like born in 1820s, I believe. So he thinks phrenology might be a breakthrough new science. Wrong. However, he accurately identifies the problem of how we're using technology, and also that are getting caught up in the form of things rather than the character of things. That's what he talks about in his chapter on illusion. He's like, don't get distracted by you know, the rich man or the poor man or the well-dressed or the slovenly. Like that does not speak to their character. And if you think it does, you are heading down a dangerous path, my friend. If you think, if like these magicians who think that proof of enlightenment or accomplishment is wealth, power, and security,
Right.
that doesn't really line up not only with the true will idea at all, but it doesn't line up with life.
Right.
Right.
Oh, it's a very Calvinist idea, right? That those are signs that you're the elect.
We
So
got a lot of
he also a
magicians.
Calvinist?
We got a lot. No, he's a Mormon, I
Oh.
believe. I think, but though I think he's less of that. I think he's just a pure magician at this point. And I do like, I do enjoy. Like, well, it's great whenever anyone's honest in their work. You know, like more power to you. If you at least be honest. We might not like what
Yeah.
you say or think.
No, but it's a point of view, and it's it's something that you can, it's good to expose, be exposed to different, different perspectives, because it challenges yourself and you grow from it, and that's, and I
and that's why
sometimes I can't, because it's just too far
yeah,
beyond the pale, but I try.
yeah. But we're here to grow, and I do believe there is
Yeah.
something to say about the integrity of the self and the soul, and
Yeah.
being true to yourself. This above all, to thine own self. So
Absolutely.
amen. Yeah. Any okay, so where can people find your stuff?
Oh yeah. So I have a website. It's just a little blog at www.deeperwisdom.org. And if you go to www.deeperwisdom.org/sign up, you can get onto my mailing list. I'm on Twitter at deeper_wisdom. And I've been having some fun on TikTok. that PRC surveillance device.
I all of a sudden want to
have,
join TikTok just to see what the fuck you're up to, man.
Yeah, I was really reluctant, and I as the funny thing is, the first person who I met, the people who I know who are on TikTok are like my dad and my aunt, like the boomers, right? But I was very reluctant to go into it because of the spyware aspect of it, and like the same reason I got off of Facebook. But I don't know, it's fun, and people seem to like what I'm doing there. So
maybe I'll make an account and check out what you're up to. I don't know.
Do it on a burner phone or something. I don't know.
At this point, yeah, who knows? I think it's because they're China. It's China, right? That's this conspiracy.
Yeah, and everything. It's all they have their fingers in everything that happens there. So basically, it's just it's probably fine. But then of course I also thought that about Facebook 5 years ago or 6 years ago.
Right.
So
yeah, I dumped so much money into my business on Facebook that in those years, and then everything deleted, all that money gone, all the friends.
Well, that's
like they can literally they can destroy lives with impunity, so that they profit, like, because they're taking your money and just cheating you, which is why the Supreme Court, they hate Canada, they hate British Columbia, because the BC Supreme Court upheld a woman suing Facebook, this Facebook was using this woman's picture to promote products to her friends, and she saw that, she's like, and she won the case. Facebook wouldn't show up, of course. They just probably paid her an undisclosed settlement. Well, they did pay her an undisclosed settlement, of course, which we have all kinds of problems like that. The Canadian, something I encountered, I noticed my bank was reordering payments, and that if they could reorder payments in such a way that if they held off for enough days, my income, they could then tick me a couple $100 of non-sufficient fund things.
Wow.
And so I Googled it, and it turns out, they were caught. They were caught doing this. And they paid out $22.5 million in settlements, but they refused to show any of their system of how they do it. And they refused to change their policies, because they brought in over 2 billion last year with those policies, which only target people who are struggling. Because if you have a cushion of hundreds of dollars, then you're fine. But if you don't, or say medical expenses, like fucking my mom's diabetic stuff costs $800 a month.
Yeah.
Like, it's not free. I don't know why Bernie Sanders keeps telling people that shit's free in Canada, and Joe Rogan keeps telling people education's free. I pay $800 a month in student loans, and I will for the rest of my life. Right? We're kept poor by these systems of power that take even the last little bucks, and they reorganize. Like, that's crazy. Like, that's actual mega corporations conspiring above board to destroy lives and keep. It's Thanks for listening, people. I hope you had a fun time. Yeah.
I'll plug another podcast for people who want to find out more about that.
Definitely.
The Dollop is an American history podcast, which is reveals the dark side of American history, but it's by two comedians, so it's actually pretty funny. But they do an episode on Wells Fargo, and they talk about that practice.
Yeah.
And of course, Wells Fargo wasn't the only one, but they got we have a lot of information because of, I don't know, Freedom of Information Act or something. But yeah, it's disgusting, and it's it's being poor is expensive, which is crazy. You get fined for being poor.
No, we've created societies that hate poor people and want them to die, and that's the reality we're living with. So have a great day. Thanks for listening, folks. Should we end it there?
Yes. I don't know
how do we wrap this up at this point?
Yeah.
Well, I have an idea. Okay. We will wrap it up using a prayer. Yes, we'll do it. We'll go out with a prayer. Great. I've never done this before.
I love it.
Okay, what would be a cool prayer? Oh, I know it'd be a cool prayer. This one. There's a prayer in here in in Enochian Evocation of Dr. John Dee, one of the best books by Jeffrey James, on Enochian magic, period. And we'll do this. We'll say a prayer. This is a great prayer. Anyone doing Enochian magic should be saying this prayer 3 times a day. It's not super short, but it's not super long. All right. Actually, that doesn't make sense.
That's the invocation, right? We want to.
No, this is not the invocation. This is
not the invocation, but the one that's
okay. Here we go.
For the work.
Oh Lord, oh Lord, oh Lord, is there any who is mortal that can measure the heavens? How therefore can the heavens enter into man's imagination? Thy creatures are the glory of thy countenance, and thereby thou glorifiest all things. But this glory excelleth and is far above my understanding. It is great wisdom to speak with kings according to one's understanding, but to command kings is not wisdom unless it come from thee. That's good.
So mote it be.
So mote it be. Thanks for being on Magic Without Fears, brother.
Thank you.
Well, have you back anytime, and hopefully I'll see you next Sunday for a little Celtic Mysteries Fairy Magic celebration. If not, people can still register and get access to the replay. That information, and nothing done on those 3 hours of Celtic celebration will ever be released publicly, but you will be able to get it in the future by paying for it. So you can pay less now or pay more later to access it, because the Celtic Mysteries need support, and I'm pouring a lot of work into that. So folks, check that out as well at demonesdeusandversus.com. Well, you can also get it at Hermetic Mystery School, but that's got the higher price point. So the other page will change soon today. But yeah, demonesdeusandversus.com. That's DEMONESDEUSINVERSUS.com. The magical motto of W.B. Yeats. And thanks for listening.